After the main story finally slammed its final page shut, after the wars, the resets, the sacrifices, and Jinwoo's long, lonely battle that literally rewrote reality, we were given something unexpected. The side stories take us into a peaceful world, rebuilt after time itself was reset. The story starts into a police station. No warning, no mercy. Jin-chul was there, locked into full brooding detective mode, doing his best tragic lawman with unresolved trauma routine. 4 years on the force, and he still walked around like life personally owed him an apology. Every few days that same hollow ache crept up on him, like he'd lost something massive, something important. A junior officer nervously approached him, coffee in hand, clearly debating whether this was a good idea. He asked if Jin-chul was okay. Jin-chul gave him that tired smile people make when they're holding themselves together with duct tape in spite, thanked him, and moved on. Inside the investigation office, the atmosphere was straight up cursed. The moment Jin-chul stepped in, he felt it. One guy was shaking so badly, it looked like he was auditioning for a possession scene. Jin-chul asked what the situation was, and that question snapped something in the man. He completely lost it. Full breakdown. Said a shadow crawled out of the floor, stared him down, and told him to confess or regret being born. The man was sobbing, screaming, begging them to arrest him immediately. Lock him up. Anything. Just don't let it come back. And then the worst part hit. Everyone else in the room confirmed it. Same shadow, same threat, same impossible experience. Jin-chul stood there internally screaming, trying to figure out how you even begin to file paperwork, for the floor threatened us. His brain was already drafting resignation letters. Before he could push further, his boss walked in with the energy of someone who absolutely did not want to hear any of this. He shut Jin-chul down instantly, told him to stop asking questions, and ordered him into the meeting room. Inside, Jin-chul sat stiff while his superior casually started talking about releasing the suspects. Jin-chul almost snapped, asked very calmly but very loudly why they were letting people go who had literally confessed on camera. The boss shut that down fast, told him to lower his voice, said the walls might be listening. He glanced out the window like he half expected something inhuman to be perched outside. The plan apparently was to let the suspects go, but monitor them for 24 hours. Official excuse? One of them, Gentile, had lost it. Group hallucination. Drugs, monsters. Typical nonsense. Investigator Kim dropped the hammer. No drugs in their system. Nothing. National lab checked twice. At that point, Gentile probably started questioning every decision that led him here. The senior investigator leaned in and asked the question nobody wanted to answer out loud. Did Jin-chul really believe a bunch of unrelated people hallucinated the exact same thing, and then all decided to turn themselves in? Higher-ups wanted answers. They had none. So the plan was simple. Bait. Let one suspect talk. Watch closely. Pray something slipped. Jin-chul asked the real question. What if something actually happens? The room laughed like he'd told a joke. One guy said he believed in ghosts now. Another, Kim, tossed out a smug comment about Jin-chul being too emotional. The senior waved it off and said they'd take one suspect to a warehouse and observe. If he tried anything, they'd shut it down. And if a monster showed up, proof. Then he smirked and told Jin-chul he didn't have to come if he was scared. Jin-chul answered with a dead-serious anime glare and said he was coming. Cut to the warehouse. Cold, dark, empty. The suspect was already unraveling, begging them not to do this, insisting he was going to die. The senior officer got annoyed, told him to sit down and shut up. Said they were guarding him. What could possibly go wrong? He asked him how much time was left. 10 minutes. Those 10 minutes weighed like hours. The air went stale, heavy, dead silent. Jin-chul felt it crawling up his spine. Something was off. Wrong in a way his instincts couldn't articulate. Time was up. Nothing happened. The suspect looked around, confused, almost hopeful. Asked why nothing was happening. The senior scoffed, accused them of lying. Said this had to be some shared drug-induced delusion. Told him to quit the act and talk. The man broke again. Said there were 4 of them that day. Said they really saw it. Jin-chul felt it before he saw anything. His body reacted on instinct. He yelled for everyone to get back. Too late. Shadows erupted from the floor like living cracks, tearing across the walls. A whip of darkness slammed the senior and Kim into the concrete. They dropped instantly, didn't move. 3 figures rose from the shadows. Real. Absolutely real. The suspect screamed, begged. It didn't matter. One shadow moved. Blood hit the ground. Then came the ants. Massive, unnatural, ant-shaped monsters with empty, dead eyes. They swarmed the man and tore him apart like it was routine. Efficient, horrifying. Then one of the shadow ants turned toward Jin-chul. It waved. No one else noticed, but Jin-chul saw it clearly. A casual little wave, like greeting an old acquaintance. Then it smiled. Jin-chul stood frozen, not breathing, not blinking. Did that thing just smile at me? And why? Why did it feel like I understood it? Then, just like that, the shadows sank back into the floor. Gone. The warehouse fell silent. Blood remained. Nothing else did. Jin-chul stood alone in that silence, shaking, whispering to himself why it all felt so familiar, like he'd seen this before, lived it before, survived it it once already. Back at the station, chaos exploded. The chief was losing his mind, screaming at junior investigators, face red with fury. The suspect hadn't escaped. He'd vanished. Officers knocked out cold. No answers. Just blood, fear, and a smile that should never have existed. The chief turned on Jin Chul like a predator, demanding answers. Jin Chul had called the ambulance. He must remember something. Jin Chul stared back, expression flat, and lied without hesitation. Said when he came to, his coworkers were already down. The chief didn't buy it, but he played along. No reports had gone upstairs yet. Jin Chul was told to keep his mouth shut. Injuries would be covered up with some fake story about a cult raid gone wrong. They nodded like obedient officers. But behind that nod, Jin Chul's mind was already spiraling, because deep down he knew this wasn't over, not even close. Later on, back in the team office, Jin Chul was still glued to the Shadow Monster case like his life depended on it. His screen was packed with files, reports, timestamps. Way too much effort for a case the chief had explicitly ordered buried. His junior glanced over, eyebrow raised, and finally asked if he was still digging into that mess. You know, the one they were told to forget ever happened. Jin Chul brushed it off with a lazy shrug. Said it was just curiosity. Routine paranoia. Nothing serious. That was a lie. Because the data staring back at him was anything but normal. Dozens of voluntary surrenders. Different districts. Different precincts. People who had no connection to each other. And yet every single one of them whispered the same nightmare. Shadows, threats, fear so real, it shattered their sanity. His junior leaned in and pointed out something interesting. The timing. All the incidents spiked in a very specific window. Late February to early March. Jin Chul's eyes narrowed. That meant something. The junior hesitated, then tossed out what he clearly thought was useless trivia. He mentioned how his aunt's bookstore always struggled around that time of year because the school year was starting and people were busy. He laughed it off, already regretting saying it. Jin Chul didn't laugh. He nodded slowly and said he'd remember that because, for some reason, it mattered. Cut. The school bursting with noise, uniforms everywhere, lockers slamming, teenage chaos at full volume. And right there, blending in like he belonged, was my glorious king. Yeah, that guy. The literal shadow monarch, the end of the world himself, casually pulling up to homeroom like he didn't just rewrite the balance of reality. The principal was already giving Mr. Park a warning, flipping through Jinwoo's file with concern dripping off every page. 2 years missing after elementary school, completely vanished. No records, no explanation. Park scoffed, said he was the Cobra, said he'd handle it. This man had no idea he was seconds away from a spiritual near-death experience. Out on the school grounds, students lined up like normal. Then came the transfer student announcement, and there he was, gloves on, aura suppressed, but not enough, standing there like a god pretending to be human for fun. Park spotted him instantly and did what teachers do best, zeroed in on dress code violations, asked why he was wearing gloves. My glorious king turned to answer, and that was the moment Park's soul tried to evacuate his body. The instant their eyes met, Park felt it. Not nervousness, not fear, something deeper, older, the kind of instinct that screams predator before your brain can catch up. His mind showed him an endless pit of darkness wrapped around that student, staring back at him. Park blinked, forced himself to breathe, barked orders at the students to stand straight, and walked away fast, pretending nothing happened while internally questioning reality itself. Behind Jinwoo, Bellion appeared and casually dropped a bomb. Said the teacher had seen them. Jinwoo realized it immediately. His presence was leaking. His power wasn't staying buried anymore. Class started. Kids talked, laughed, passed notes, lived normal lives. And in the middle of all of it sat my glorious king, quietly reading like he wasn't a walking apocalypse. Then someone approached him, a classmate named Young-gil. Said they were middle school friends. Jinwoo looked at him, expression calm, unreadable, said nothing. But the shadows around him noticed. Then trouble rolled in. A group of students circled them, bad vibes on full display. One told Young-gil to move, another puffed his chest and asked if Jinwoo thought he was better than everyone else. Someone pointed at the single glove and demanded he take it off, accused him of hiding something, a tattoo, a weapon, anything. Jinwoo stayed silent. Inside his head, Baru was absolutely losing it, begging for permission to erase these kids from existence for their disrespect. Jinwoo told him to relax. Then, slowly, deliberately, he began peeling off the glove. When his hand was revealed, the entire group froze. That hand was ruined, burned, scarred beyond healing, like it had been dragged through hell and back. The same hand that never healed, no matter what, because it was a reminder, a gift from Antares, the monarch of destruction. Jinwoo calmly asked if they'd never seen a burn before. Panic hit instantly. The bullies backpedaled, hands up, laughing nervously, swearing it was just a joke, just messing around. Then Baru lunged. Before anyone could scream, Jinwoo manipulated their shoes. Perfect timing. Every single one of them face planted into the dirt. The courtyard exploded with laughter. The bullies scrambled up looking like clowns covered in dust and humiliation. Jinwoo smiled. That one was just for fun. Later in the hallway, Jinwoo and Young-gil talked. Young-gil said Jinwoo had changed, said he stayed way too calm back there, asked if he'd been training during his time away. Jinwoo nodded, said he trained a lot. Young-gil asked if he was joining a club. Jinwoo smiled faintly. There was one he had in mind. Cut to the field. Choi Tai-woong, captain of the track team, stared at Jinwoo like he wasn't sure this was real, asked if they were joining together. Jinwoo said it was just him. Some club members wandered over, throwing shade, mocking him for choosing track of all things. Choi ignored them and asked if Jinwoo had any athletic background. Jinwoo answered honestly, "Number." That didn't help. One guy sneered, asked why someone with zero experience was wasting their time. Jinwoo calmly said he wanted to meet someone at the tournament, someone important. In his mind, Cha Hae-In. The members looked unimpressed. A few looked ready to laugh. Choi thought for a moment, then pointed to a second year standing nearby, the slowest one on the team. That was the test. If my glorious king could beat him in a straight race, he'd be allowed to join. Simple as that. The guy he was up against didn't look bulky or intimidating at first glance. Lean build, calm face, but his legs were thick, grounded, and his stance screamed experience. This wasn't some random background NPC. This was someone who ran. Still, Jinwoo accepted without hesitation, like the condition didn't even register as a risk. A few club members snorted behind their hands, whispering like idiots. Clearly, this freshman had no idea who he was lining up against. That guy? Third place in last year's regional tournament. Not elite, but absolutely no joke. Choi made the rules official. Win, and Jinwoo joins the team. Lose, and he's stuck doing everyone's laundry and cleanup for an entire month. Outside on the track, tension built. Meanwhile, inside the school, Park Seol was trying very hard to pretend he was fine. A fellow teacher asked if he was feeling better after earlier. Park waved it off, said he just needed a smoke. A few minutes later, he was leaning against the break room window, cigarette in hand, trying to calm his nerves. That's when he saw it. Out on the track field, my glorious king was running, leading the pack. Park squinted, frowned, and asked another teacher why that student was running with the track team. The other guy explained casually that he was a freshman who showed up out of nowhere and asked to join. They ran a speed test. He passed easily, so now they were checking his stamina. Oh, and he's on lap 20 already, the teacher added, like that was normal. Doesn't look tired at all. Honestly, it's exhausting just watching him. Then he left. Park stayed frozen. Maybe he got it wrong. Maybe that kid wasn't some walking omen of doom. Maybe he was just a freak athlete, a talented but harmless student. And then he saw it. Clinging to Jinwoo as he ran was a dark aura, thick and heavy, like death itself had wrapped its arms around him. It didn't belong on a school field. It didn't belong in daylight. Park's cigarette nearly slipped from his fingers as his breath caught in his throat. No, he whispered to himself. That's just the light. Shadows? Fatigue? He didn't believe a word of it. Something about that kid was wrong. Deeply, fundamentally wrong. And Park felt it in his bones. Then all hell broke loose. Park was still desperately trying to gaslight himself when Baru popped up outside the window in full nightmare mode. No warning, no filter, just horror movie timing perfected. Park screamed like his soul was being exorcised and collapsed onto the floor. The teacher beside him nearly passed out and started yelling for help. Absolute chaos. Outside, Igris stared at Baru with the tired disappointment of a long-suffering parent and told him this was exactly why he said not to do that. Baru just shrugged, completely unapologetic. Now they knew for sure. This man could see them. Cut to a restaurant. Jinchul was sitting across from a colleague, mid-meal, when the guy finally asked why he was still digging into that case. Asked if Jinchul had seen anything strange that day. Jinchul played dumb. Hit him with a smooth, "What are you talking about?" Didn't work. The colleague brought up the warehouse incident, the day the suspect vanished like a magic trick. Jinchul hesitated, then admitted it. Said he saw something. Something huge. Something that looked like an ant. Not a joke. Not a metaphor. A monster. A massive ant-shaped thing pretending to be reality. The colleague went pale and asked if Jinchul was seriously claiming there were ant monsters running around. Before Jinchul could answer, a random guy from the next table, who had absolutely been eavesdropping, leaned over and asked if it had a human body with an ant head. Jinchul was done. Conversation over. Next day, back on the school field, the track team was grinding through laps while Choi screamed about conquering the nation. The members were dying, silently wondering when this stopped being about regionals and turned into a military training arc. Young Gil, way in the back, was wheezing like his lungs were filing a resignation letter. Jinwoo glanced over and asked Bellion why this guy even showed up if he was going to suffer like this. Bellion, bored out of his mind, said humans are stupid. Then Jinwoo casually boosted Young Gil with his power. Instantly, Young Gil straightened up. His body lit up. Confusion hit first, then speed. He shot forward like he'd just unlocked a hidden stat. Everyone stared in shock. At the edge of the field, Park Sang was watching. He remembered last night, drunk, rambling, talking about ant monsters, to an officer before snapping out of it and apologizing, blaming the alcohol. Jinchul hadn't laughed. He'd asked questions, serious ones. Now Park Sang felt that same dread crawling up his spine as he watched Jinwoo. Bellion suggested wiping the man's memory and stripping his abilities. Jinwoo said no, not yet. They needed to observe him. Outside the school gates, Jinchul arrived, tired and wary. Too many strange cases were stacking up. A criminal seeing monsters. A teacher witnessing something no one else could. a student at the center of it all. How do you ask a teenager if they're connected to monsters without sounding insane? A shadow shifted. Jinchul flinched. He knew something was there. Inside the classroom, Jinwoo sat quietly, aware of the shadow he'd placed. Moments later, Jinchul entered, calmly telling the teacher he just needed to ask a few questions. Then he asked for Jinwoo by name. The room went silent. Whispers spread instantly. Investigator visits never meant anything good. In a quieter area, Jinchul apologized for interrupting class. Jinwoo said it was fine. Inside, he knew it had been over 10 years since they last met. He didn't say it out loud. That kind of honesty felt wrong now. Jinchul studied him and felt that same unease. These eyes didn't belong to a kid. They belonged to someone who had lived too much. He pulled out a rough sketch of a bug monster and asked if it looked familiar. Jinwoo glanced at it and said yes. That single word hit Jinchul like a truck. Questions exploded in his mind. Who was this kid? What had he seen? Why did he feel like someone carrying multiple lifetimes? Jinchul reined it in, explained the sketch was part of an ongoing investigation, and asked if Jinwoo could share anything else. Jinwoo shrugged and said it looked like something from a goofy kids show. Jinchul took the loss, thanked him, and told him he could return to class. He added that the teacher had already signed off on it, like the whole thing was no big deal. As Jinchul turned to leave, my glorious king casually asked if he could keep the sketch. Baru immediately started whining in his head, throwing out a half-hearted protest about sensitive materials and idiots with paper, but Jinchul barely hesitated before handing it over anyway. The moment Jinchul disappeared down the hall, Igris emerged from the shadows, looking like a man who had lost patience with the entire timeline. He asked, straight up, why his king didn't just tell him everything. Why keep dancing around it? My glorious king answered cold and quiet, saying forgetfulness was a mercy, a gift from the gods. Even if that gift had been engineered by humans playing with tools they never should have touched in the first place. Back in class, he didn't even get a second to breathe. The girls instantly swarmed him like vultures with eyeliner, firing questions nonstop. Who was that investigator? Why did the police show up? Was he in trouble? My glorious king kept his tone relaxed. Said Jinchul was just an old friend handling some personal business. That only fueled them more. One girl suddenly leaned in, squinting, and dropped a rumor bomb. Said people were saying he was way more built than he looked. Asked if he worked out. Before he could even answer, a hand shoved between them and gently but firmly moved the girls aside. Enter the clowns. A group of smug students rolled up, faces full of confidence they absolutely did not deserve. They joked about how popular he must be now if the cops were personally visiting him. One of them pushed it further, asking if my glorious king planned to run crying to the police if things got rough. He didn't finish that sentence. A powerful arm locked around his neck from behind and yanked him backward into a chokehold. Captain Choi of the track team had arrived, back up in tow. Choi stared the bullies down and calmly asked if they really wanted smoke with the entire track squad. My glorious king blinked and asked why the hell they were even in his classroom. Choi laughed and said they were just preventing him from losing control and turning the place into a crime scene. My glorious king told him to stop joking. Choi waved it off and said they were actually there to remind him about the newbie welcome party. Then, like it was nothing, he invited both my glorious king and Young to come along after school. As the track team escorted the bullies out, my glorious king asked what they planned to do with them. Choi smiled and said, just a light jog, nothing illegal, just enough cardio to force some serious self-reflection. Later, as the team was heading out for the party, Choi joked about maybe scaring the bullies a little more for fun. My glorious king shook his head with a rare smile and said no need. The message had already landed. Just when he thought the day was finally done, someone called his name. He turned and saw Jinchul walking toward him again. Jinchul asked if they could finish their earlier conversation. My glorious king nodded, but Choi shouted from a distance that he'd take Young hostage if my glorious king ditched the party. My glorious king told Jinchul to keep it short since his friend was waiting. Jinchul inhaled slowly. Then his entire presence shifted. He spoke two words that hit like a sucker punch. Hunter Sung Jinwoo. My glorious king didn't respond. He didn't need to. The look in his eyes said everything. Whatever mask he'd been wearing evaporated instantly, and Jinchul knew it. Jinchul's mind snapped back to earlier that day. Right after handing over the sketch, he'd walked away thinking it was nothing. Just paper. Just a casual moment. But the instant he turned the corner, regret slammed into him out of nowhere. Deep, heavy, unexplainable. Like he'd just given away something massive without realizing it. Then the voice came. Association chairman, do you trust me? Jinchul froze, looked around. Nothing there. Then another voice answered. His own. I trust you. That was enough. The floodgates burst open. Memories crashed into him violently. He collapsed to his knees as visions tore through his mind. Not dreams, not imagination. Broken timelines. Reset worlds. Everything bending around one man. Through my glorious king's eyes, Jinchul saw it all. Endless gates, oceans of blood, monarchs, rulers, wars that never made it into history. A life erased, so this one could exist. He remembered asking once if Jinwoo planned to handle everything alone. And Jinwoo answering yes, calmly, because time meant nothing to him anymore. Back in the present, they walked side by side in silence. Eventually, Jinchul asked how long Jinwoo had really been trapped in that dimensional crack. The official record said 2 years, but logic clearly didn't apply there. Jinwoo answered evenly. 27 years. Jinchul visibly flinched. Then he asked the question no one else would. Did he regret it? Jinwoo shook his head. Said he'd make the same choice 100 more times without hesitation. Jinchul studied him and said he seemed to be doing okay now. Jinwoo smiled faintly. Said he was happy, except for not aging anymore and constantly needing new identities, which was a pain in the ass. That's when it truly hit Jinchul. This man had beaten death, time, power, immortality itself. He could rule the world if he wanted. Instead, he sat in classrooms, pretending to be normal. Jinchul asked if he'd ever considered joining their side. Law enforcement was falling behind, and those shadow beasts scared criminals more than prison ever could. Jinwoo laughed, said if he joined the cops, there'd be nothing left for anyone else to do. Jinchul smiled and said that was the dream. When asked again, Jinwoo gave a vague maybe. As he walked away, Jinchul yelled that he'd wait for him. Jinwoo fired back that he shouldn't hold his breath. The pay sucked, and the headaches weren't worth it. The air settled. Time moved on. Everything stayed quiet until late April. In the scorched wastelands of Western America, something cracked open where nothing should have existed. A man staggered through the sand and called emergency services. His voice shook, but he wasn't injured. The operator asked if he was lost, and he said no. Then paused. He wanted to report something, and he just didn't know how to explain it. She kept pressing him, voice steady but tight, asking exactly what he saw. The man stalled, swallowing hard like the words themselves might kill him. Then he finally muttered it. Cracks. Not one, not two, a lot of them. She asked where, probably already bracing herself. His answer came out barely above a whisper, like saying it louder would make it real. The sky. The sky is breaking. Cut back to my glorious king's place, where peace has a strict 5-minute expiration date. He was laid back with Igris, buried under scrolls, relics, and ancient unreadable nonsense that probably shouldn't exist anymore. Then his expression changed. No warning, no build-up, just that feeling. The balance shifted. Something brushed against Earth's air that absolutely did not belong here. Hard cut to a quiet little cafe that looked harmless on the surface, but spiritually, absolute war zone. A ruler's vessel walked in like a normal customer, sat down like they were ordering coffee, then casually dropped a title heavy enough to bend reality when addressing my glorious king. No pleasantries, no small talk. My glorious king got straight to it, asked if the sky cracks and all the messed up disturbances were their doing. The vessel nearly folded in on themselves, denied it instantly, said rulers don't travel like that. Not their method, not their style. So my glorious king asked the real question. Then who the hell is knocking on Earth's door? The ruler explained it like a nightmare you don't wake up from. There's a race called the Titans, absolute units, planet-eating cosmic parasites that drift from world to world, devouring minerals, mana, and anything else not nailed down. They once tried to invade the ruler's world, got absolutely erased by the army of the sky. Now they've locked onto Earth. My glorious king asked why now. The ruler's voice dropped, said they believed it was because of the cup of reincarnation. That timeline reset cheat code may have wiped history, but it didn't wipe the echo. The Titans remembered the power that once existed here, the power from the erased timeline. They're not hunting Earth, they're hunting him. My glorious king asked the obvious question, if he was the reason. The ruler didn't deny it, didn't dodge it, said straight up the Titans are chasing the god-tier energy. My glorious king now radiates just by existing. The rulers already sent their sky army toward Earth, but my glorious king shook his head. Too slow. That gate will take years to fully open. Earth doesn't have years. Then he said it. No hesitation, no drama. I'll handle it myself. Meanwhile, across the American wastelands, a top-secret Area 51 level zone slammed into full lockdown. The U.S. government threw emergency protocols at the sky cracks like paperwork was going to scare cosmic horrors. Scientists flooded in talking about atmospheric anomalies, spatial fractures, nonsense words that meant nothing in the face of what was happening. One old researcher told a soldier he'd studied the sky for 30 years and had never seen anything even remotely like this. The soldier tried to reassure him, said if anything comes out, the military's ready. Right on cue, a tank started levitating, not shaking, not sliding, floating. That's when everyone collectively lost their souls. In the distance stood my glorious king, casually flexing ruler's authority like he was brushing dust off reality. He looked at the missiles, the guns, the entire human war machine, and shut it down instantly. Useless. Whatever's coming isn't stopping for metal and bullets. The ground cleared, dust settled. He looked up at the fractured sky like he'd just unlocked the final boss arena. The stage is ready. He could feel it now. Something massive drawing closer. A hunger so intense it screamed across dimensions. A desire to devour the world itself. He summoned his daggers. Then the shadow sword followed, sliding into his hand like it belonged there. He spoke calmly. You're not fighting a hunter today. You're fighting a monarch who hunts. Job titles stacked. Back at the breach, the gate wasn't just a crack anymore. Titans started pouring out like cursed loot drops. Huge, deformed, wrong. Leading them was a flying titan radiating main villain energy. He spotted my glorious king standing alone and laughed, asking asking if it was really just him. My glorious king answered without raising his voice. Do I look like I came alone? The shadows spread. The land darkened. The army rose from the ground like the planet itself answered his call. Shadow soldiers, giants, commanders, an endless tide. My glorious king lifted his hand. It begins. No speeches, no countdown. Elsewhere in the White House, the president sat pale, surrounded by chaos. Reports were incoherent. Cracks in the sky. Lights. Monsters. No explanations. No playbook. He wasn't even sure this was something humanity could stop. Officer Harrison walked in like a man carrying spoilers. Said it was already over. Told the president to come to the briefing room. They played drone footage. Silence. The president stared at the screen. One man standing in the middle of hell like it was a casual afternoon. Monsters falling. Entire armies erased. He asked the only question that made sense. Who is that man? Where did that army come from? Harrison swallowed. No one knows yet. Back in the desert, the battle hit full throttle. Tusk finished charging, unleashed an attack so violent the sky itself looked like a graveyard. The two armies collided, but this wasn't a fair fight. Shadow giants tore through titans like wet paper. My glorious king led the charge, moving faster than sight, summoning the shadow sword mid-air as it grew larger with every heartbeat. He hurled it like a solution to a problem. Titans dropped one by one. No grace, no dignity, full disrespect. The flying titan blocked the blade and scoffed, calling it a cheap trick, then froze when something else moved. My glorious king's hand changed. It expanded, darkened, morphed into a massive shadow claw. He slammed it down, pinning the titan into the earth like crushing an insect. He landed calmly as dust swallowed the battlefield. From the smoke, glowing red eyes flared. The titan started monologuing, talking about how impressive this power was for such a small planet. Mocked humans for relying on mana. Claimed titans had to restrain themselves just to fight here. My glorious king listened, unmoved, unimpressed, and very far from finished. He kept talking, full of himself, saying only the top-tier titans could fight like that, and surprise, he was one of them. Then he told my glorious king to beg. That was the exact moment he fucked up. Before he could finish his little villain TED talk, a blade flashed through the air. No warning, no build-up. One clean, merciless cut. The titan split open like paper. Marshal Bellion stood there, with his sword already lowered, like he'd just swatted a fly. Bellion glanced back at my glorious king, head tilted slightly, checking if he'd interrupted something important. My glorious king shook his head. Nah, these things talk way too much. Looks like they need special attention. Bellion nodded once. Say less. And then he was gone. Rushing forward, carving through titans like they owed him money and were late on payments. Limbs flew. Massive bodies collapsed. The battlefield turned into a titan graveyard real quick. Back in the White House briefing room, the entire squad was glued to the screen. No one spoke. No one even breathed. The president finally broke the silence, asking if they had figured out who this mystery man was yet. Of course they hadn't. The guy was out there bodying cosmic monsters while they were still stuck at square one. The president rubbed his face, muttering that it felt like he was watching a movie instead of real life. He asked if there was any way to identify him. Director David Brennan hesitated, then said honestly, no, not directly, but there was another approach. The president looked up immediately. Brennan dropped the name, Madame Norma Selner. He said if anyone could find the truth, it was her. She always did. Hard cut to South Korea. National track and field prelims were kicking off, loud as hell, full of energy. And there stood my glorious king with his team like he hadn't just finished wiping titans off the face of the planet. He scanned the field, and his eyes landed on Kim Chul. Kim Chul noticed. His senior snapped at him, asking why he wasn't warming up. Kim Chul said he was, even though his body felt stiff. Then Kim Chul's team captain walked over to Captain Choi and immediately started running his mouth. Said he couldn't believe they put a first year on the main roster. Asked if Sang-in was so broken from his injury that they had to fill the slot with a rookie. Choi didn't flinch, said their first year was about to shock everyone. The other captain laughed, said they must have given up on running and switched to comedy. That laugh wasn't going to age well. Kim Chol tried to act confident in front of the crowd, bragging that his team had their own monster rookie now. But when his eyes landed on my glorious king, his brain straight up short-circuited. Sweat broke out on his forehead. His heart skipped. For a split second, he thought he might pass out. He couldn't explain it. This overwhelming pressure. This instinct screaming at him to kneel. The guy looked like a normal student, so why did his soul feel like it was about to fold? Kim Chul told himself to stop being dramatic. Then he suddenly shouted, loud enough to make people jump. Someone asked if he was okay. He waved it off, said he was fine, but even he knew that was bullshit. He walked straight up to my glorious king, forcing himself not to flinch. He repeated the lie in his head, this guy's weak, just another kid. Then he glared and snapped, telling my glorious king that if he had something to say, they should say it somewhere private. Captain Choi and the others panicked instantly, told my glorious king to relax, not to break anyone. Choi cracked a joke about acting noble and not spilling blood on school grounds. My glorious king calmly told them not to worry. Nothing bad would happen. Later, they moved to a quieter spot. The moment they were alone, Kim Chol grabbed my glorious king by the collar and started yelling, demanding to know if this was some kind of joke. Behind the scenes, the Shadow Squad was watching like it was a live sporting event. Iron was hyped, wondering if this meant Iron was finally back in action. Bellion, meanwhile, was pissed. He hated how the kid was touching his king and offered to handle it permanently. Then it happened. Kim Chol froze. His legs gave out. His knees slammed into the ground. His body started shaking uncontrollably. Tears spilled down his face, and he had no idea why. He looked up, broken, asking why this was happening to him. My glorious king stood there silently. Then he thought it through. This kid was still human, not a shadow, not an enemy. No need to go full monarch on him. He turned and started walking away. That's when Kim Chul said something so unhinged it bent reality. Is this what love feels like? My glorious king stopped dead. He turned back, confused, asking what kind of trash iron had been whispering into people's heads again. He sighed. Fine, cleanup time. He gently rewrote Kim Chul's memories, made it so Kim Chul remembered trying to pick a fight, but backing off after realizing my glorious king was close with his father. Told him there was no reason for hatred. That kindness was the better path. Snap. Before leaving, my glorious king added one final line into his mind. You helped protect this world. Be proud. As he walked away, Kim Chul slowly came back to himself, looking around like he'd just woken from the strangest dream. An announcement echoed across the field, calling middle school runners to the track. Scene cut. United States. David Brennan arrived at Lady Selner's place, polite and stiff as ever. She smiled like she already knew everything and invited him inside. The smell of food filled the air. He asked if she'd been eating. She said no. Some other guests had arrived just before him. David skipped the small talk and said he'd get straight to the point. Lady Selner calmly replied that after the last visitor, she lost the ability to see the future. David stiffened, asking if she meant that man again. She ignored the nickname and told him she'd already answered the question he was about to ask. David raised an eyebrow. She explained she only repeats answers to questions he's already asked in the past. She's seen those moments. She's just delivering the replies now. She knows exactly who he's looking for, but she won't say a word about him. When David asked why, her smile faded. Because that man could be unimaginably dangerous, and he might be the greatest threat the country has ever faced. That's exactly why she keeps her lips sealed. David can still see the footage burned into his brain clear as day. One single man standing dead center against monsters so absurdly powerful they could flatten cities just by sneezing wrong. And yet, instead of running or flexing for glory, that man was shielding humans like it was the most natural thing in the world. No hesitation, no doubt, just protection. David is so deep in his thoughts that he nearly jumps out of his skin when Selner suddenly speaks again. Would you believe me? She says calmly. If I told you this has happened before? David freezes. She goes on, explaining that humanity has brushed against extinction-level disasters like this multiple times in the past, and nobody ever noticed. They survived without even realizing how close they came to being wiped off the map. That thought alone rattles him. He starts wondering if the man from the video really could be something like that so-called god of death she mentioned earlier. Shaken, David finally turns toward the door, ready to leave, but he stops with his hand on the handle. He looks back and asks the question that actually matters. Can you promise me that the man in that video isn't dangerous? Selner answers instantly without hesitation, like she's reciting a fact carved into reality itself. Yes, I can promise that. That's enough for David. He nods, satisfied. For now. He says he'll take her word for it and very deliberately pretends he didn't hear her earlier slip about already knowing the man. As he turns to leave, Selner casually offers him some freshly baked cookies, almost like she's trying to keep him there just a little longer. David smiles politely, declines, and promises he'll come back soon. The moment the door closes, Thomas Andre steps into the room, wearing the kind of expression that says he hates everything about what just happened. He bluntly says he doesn't like David, and asks Selner if she wants him to handle it. Selner doesn't even look impressed. She reminds Thomas that he's already one bad move away from getting banned from the fighter world entirely, and tells him to relax for once in his life. And there he is, Thomas Andre, standing in the kitchen wearing an apron, looking like a confused dad who wandered into the wrong sitcom. A man built like a walking natural disaster, dressed like he's about to sell baked goods on daytime TV. She hands him the cookie bag like she's feeding a child and nods. Thomas proceeds to absolutely vacuum every cookie like his soul depends on it. Then, with crumbs still probably in his beard, he gets serious. He starts talking about how people die every day from stupid accidents, how traffic deaths alone are insane, and asks her why she even bothered saving him when she didn't know him at all. Without her, he figures he'd be burning in hell right now, probably suplexing demons with a steel chair. So why him? Selner doesn't answer right away. She just smiles faintly, walks over to the window and stares outside like she's watching something only she can see. After a long pause, she finally says that Thomas did many good things in his past life. Thomas looks at her like she's completely lost it. He straight up asks if she's sure she's talking about the right person. This is him, the so-called devil of the UFC. The guy known for breaking bones and collecting teeth. Good deeds doesn't exactly match his resume. Meanwhile, as David starts his car outside, Thomas turns back to Selner and asks what the man in that video possibly did to make the entire government come running to her like she's the last sane person left on Earth. Selner pauses again, milking the moment so hard Thomas nearly groans. Then she drops it. That man saved the world. Thomas blinks hard. At this point, he's convinced she's off her meds, But honestly, he's not exactly a pillar of mental stability himself, so he rolls with it. He asks what this so-called world-saving hero is doing now. Flying around? Saving kittens? Being dramatic? Selner laughs, genuinely amused, and says, even she doesn't know. And then, hard cut, back to Korea. There she is, Cha Hae-In, sitting under a tree like she stepped straight out of a dream sequence. Peaceful, beautiful, untouched by the chaos of gods, monarchs, and apocalyptic wars. My glorious king stands nearby, watching her silently. No monsters, no blood, no end-of-the-world stakes, just quiet tension thick enough to choke on. But rewind a few hours, because the vibe back then was completely different. The middle school preliminaries are about to start, and the place is buzzing. Kids are stretching, hyping themselves up, bouncing on their feet like they're about to run for their lives. Everyone's nervous, but none of them have that unmistakable main character aura like Mommy Cha. And yes, we are absolutely ignoring the shameless thirst angle panels because the artist knew exactly what they were doing. The whistle blows and they're off. Some kids sprint like this is the moment they've trained for their entire existence. Others gas out halfway through and start lagging behind, realizing far too late that cardio is in fact important. But Cha, she runs like the devil himself is chasing her with unpaid bills and zero mercy. She crosses the finish line fast, but there's no smile, no celebration. She quietly limps away from the crowd and collapses under a tree. She pulls off her shoe and yeah, her ankle is absolutely cooked. Swollen, bruised, looking like it just lost a boss fight against gravity. She sits there, wondering if she can even keep going, mentally cursing every god she knows. That's when, out of nowhere, my glorious king appears, calm, collected, dressed like he casually walked out of a shonen anime. She turns, confused, trying to figure out why this random guy is talking to her. His uniform tells her he's a participant too. But why he's here feels like an unsolved math problem. Before she can even question him properly, he starts talking, telling her not to be stupid. Running on an injury is how stories end early. He talks about someone who ignored the pain and paid the price. Meanwhile, she's thinking, who the hell is this guy? And then, because fantasy romance laws demand it, the scent happens. But before she can process that, her ankle flares up again, like it's personally offended. He suddenly touches her ankle, and for half a second, she's ready to label him a certified weirdo. But instead, he lightly taps it, and the pain vanishes completely, like it was never there. She stares at him, stunned, because she just watched someone do something that felt an awful lot like magic. She just sat there staring at him, probably wondering if she'd accidentally wandered into some kind of underground medical drama starring a random track kid with miracle hands. My glorious king told her straight up not to hesitate. No regrets. Chances like this don't come twice, and if she was going to run, she should run like it mattered. With that, he turned to leave, already halfway gone. And that's when she hit him with the most dangerous spell known to humanity. Wait, have we met before? He stopped. Didn't say yes. Didn't say no. Instead, he dropped a challenge like it was nothing. He told her that if she could ever beat him in a race, even once, he'd tell her everything. Who he really was. Whether they'd met before. All of it. She looked at him like he'd completely lost his mind. Because as far as she knew, this guy was unbeatable. Every prelim, every match. Always first, always ahead. Like some kind of running machine engineered purely for victory. Still, she didn't back down. She said she'd beat him someday. Not only that, she'd set a new record while doing it. He agreed easily, already walking away, thinking to himself that, yeah, she really hadn't changed at all. Time moved fast after that. My glorious king slipped into school life like he was actually normal. Track practice, classes, games, homework. Just another student trying to vibe. Except he was secretly the most broken existence on the planet. He ran with the team, studied with them, laughed with them, all while holding back power that could fold reality in half. Then Christmas Eve arrived. The city lit up like a holiday movie set. Warm lights everywhere. People laughing, shopping, enjoying the night like the world wasn't constantly one bad day away from ending. And there he was, walking alone through it all, looking like he existed in grayscale while everyone else glowed. He passed a clothing store and spotted a mannequin with actual drip. One thought later, dark smoke wrapped around him, and his outfit upgraded instantly. Clean, sharp, menacing in that quiet way. Tusk emerged from the shadows like a proud father and nodded in approval. "You look magnificent, my liege." As my glorious king started walking again, he heard footsteps behind him, light, careful, the kind of steps that screamed, someone is up to something. He turned around. Of course, Mommy Cha, looking unreal. The kind of presence that could make angels rethink their careers and demons reconsider their life choices. She clearly thought she was being sneaky, but he'd noticed her the moment she stepped into range. They talked. Nothing dramatic, just updates. But every word felt heavier than it should have. He mentioned he'd be going to university soon. She raised an eyebrow, clearly calling bullshit internally, and asked why that one. With his grades, he could have gone anywhere. Maybe even universities that technically didn't exist yet. He said it was a scholarship. Study abroad. Also mentioned there was someone there he'd just met. That side eye she gave him could have cracked concrete. Is that because of a girl? He didn't answer. Didn't deny it either. And in romance language, that's a full confession. She caught herself getting flustered. Tried to play it cool. Tried to pretend her heart wasn't doing parkour in her chest. Then she pulled the throwback. She reminded him of the race, the promise. That if she ever beat him, he'd tell her everything, about whether they'd met before, about how he really felt, about whether this mysterious university girl even existed, or if she was just an excuse to dodge feelings. He looked caught, smiled anyway. Then she stepped closer, too close. She wrapped her scarf around his neck, slow and deliberate, like she was claiming territory, like the softest, most dangerous power move imaginable. Then she leaned in and whispered the most cursed challenge imaginable. "If you like me, don't move." And with that, she turned and walked away toward a tree. My glorious king just stood there, stunned, brain short-circuiting, emotional whiplash hitting harder than any monarch ever had. Mommy Cha had absolutely cooked him. From the shadows, the soldiers were losing their minds. Confusion, shock, disbelief. Did their king just take the biggest L of his entire existence? Baru, meanwhile, was being the worst possible wingman, whispering demonic encouragement and telling him to move like his life depended on it. But my glorious king wasn't listening. All he saw was her walk, her smile, a memory from long ago, a promise to meet again. She touched the tree, turned back, and asked him to keep his promise. He scratched his chin, finally admitting defeat in the quietest way possible. Then he ordered the shadows to close their eyes, because even immortal death soldiers don't need to witness their king being emotionally vulnerable, and started walking toward her. Cue the "it should have been me" moment. After that, the scene shifted. Far away in the silent world of shadows, time stood still. No war, no commands, just peace. In the deep realm where light doesn't matter and clocks don't exist, Tusk greeted the day like it was completely normal. Kaisel nodded back in quiet acknowledgement. An orc bowed respectfully and said good morning. Tusk smiled and returned it, even though the sky never changed. Then a certain bug with way too much personality strutted in. Marshal Baru was grinning like he knew something. Tusk let out a dramatic chuckle, fully committing to whatever nonsense was coming. Baru revealed the gift, a robe. Not just any robe. It was identical to the one worn by Mr. Aura Farmer. Perfect detail, perfect craftsmanship. Every stitch screamed loyalty. Tusk froze, genuinely shaken. He asked how he could ever repay such a thing. Baru waved it off like it was nothing. Tusk put the robe on, holding himself together like he was one emotion away from ruining the moment. Then Baru pointed at the orb Tusk carried and suggested turning it into a proper staff, something worthy of a general. Tusk summoned the dwarves, the real ones, not background extras. They bowed deeply, saying it was an honor to work on a sacred weapon left behind by their king. In this endless world of darkness, over 10 million shadows existed together. Some slept, some trained, some fought, some argued, some tried to kill each other with yelling alone. What started as an army of silent dead had turned into something chaotic and alive. They had emotions now, curiosity, friendship, joy, drama. They were no longer empty copies, they were reflections of their king, the one who ripped them out of death itself and handed them something they never had before, purpose. In that rare stretch of peace, every single shadow felt it, gratitude. The staff was finally complete. It radiated power, pride, legacy. When Tusk lifted it high, the shadows erupted. Cheers thundered through the dark like a coronation ceremony for a king who didn't even need a crown. This wasn't just a weapon. It was recognition. Then the atmosphere shifted. A group descended through the blackened sky, cutting through the calm like a blade. Tusk narrowed his eyes immediately, grip tightening. "Who are you?" The answer dropped casually. "Bellion." Instantly, Tusk snapped to attention, like someone flipped a switch. Spine straight, chest out, presentation mode activated. He was already halfway into a full speech, ready to flex every achievement from the Dragon Monarch fight like it was a resume review. And then someone interrupted him. Tusk was ready to throw hands until he turned and saw who it was. Commander Igris, standing there like an immovable wall. All of Tusk's pride evaporated on the spot, gone, reduced to dust. He immediately pivoted into full loyalty mode, tossing praise and devotion like free samples. Igris listened, then nodded once. "Thank you for your loyalty." That was it. Tusk blinked, recalibrated, and asked why Igris was here. The answer came calm, heavy. "It will begin soon." Tusk turned toward the window and froze. Outside he saw him, my glorious king, standing beside Mommy Cha. His presence alone bent the air. His aura was so overwhelming, it made fear feel like a forgotten concept. Around Tusk, the shadows exploded into cheers, clapping, probably crying. But Igris stayed silent, because his mind had already gone back to the beginning, back to the first time he ever met that human, back when he stood alone in a fabricated world created by the last Shadow Monarch, back when he was given a single order: test the man who would become the vessel. Back before that man earned the name My Glorious King. Igris understood then. It wasn't just a mission, it was a farewell. The old monarch had already chosen peace, but before leaving everything behind, he wanted one last answer. Was this human worthy? Igris never questioned it, never argued. Orders were orders. Even in a false world with no escape, Igris stood tall, waiting. He remembered the throne room vividly, how everything felt too perfect. The stone, the air, the silence. It wasn't real. It was memory shaped into a cage. Only the architect could recreate the past this cleanly. Using Shadow Daddy's own power, he'd built a place where a human could slowly adapt to the Shadow Monarch's strength without exploding on contact. Igris sat on the throne, but something felt wrong. There was something behind the doors. His thoughts spiraled. Was it already time? Was it disrespectful to sit before the successor arrived? He stood. The doors creaked open. And there he was, cloaked in black like living night, bowing deeply. Ygritte studied him. So this was the chosen one. He stepped forward, sword drawn. There could be no mercy. If the human failed, Ygritte would end him without hesitation. At first it was ugly. The human dodged, retreated, endured. No counterattacks, no offense. Just survival. Ygritte assumed it was over. Then he realized something. This idiot was planning to fight him barehanded. No weapon, no armor, just raw will. It was insane, reckless, stupid. Ygritte respected it anyway. He charged and slammed the human into the wall with a single strike. Disappointment hit immediately. This weak-eyed human? This was the heir? Ygritte raised his blade to finish it, and then the human caught the sword with his hand, just stopped it. Ygritte froze, not because the blade was halted, but because the human refused to give up, even crushed, even hopeless. He still fought, that stubborn, self-destructive refusal to die. That fire, the same fire his old king once carried. Ygritte should have won. His stats were higher, his experience deeper, his strength overwhelming. But he lost, not because he faltered, because the human never stopped pushing. That single moment turned fate sideways, and instead of shame, Ygritte felt relief, pride. The old king had been right. Time passed, battles piled up, orders followed, silence stretched between wars, and that fire only grew brighter. My glorious king never treated Ygritte like a tool. He spoke to him, saw him, respected him. That mattered. Grief faded, loyalty took root. This wasn't just a ruler anymore, this was a comrade. Then the old guard returned, the true Shadow Legion, veterans of ancient wars, and among them, Bellion, an old ally from before peace. Their reunion should have been emotional. Instead, chaos immediately followed. Bellion had clearly spent way too much time around that overgrown insect and caught terminal Baru brain. He suggested planting a massive black flag on top of the castle. Ygritte said nothing, but internally he sighed. This was his life now. Baru went feral, screaming that it was absolutely necessary to honor their king. But Jinwoo, cold, efficient, heartless menace, looked at the flag, asked why it existed, and a few seconds later Bellion's head was buried in the ground. Peace as usual didn't last, because the universe stays obsessed with trauma. War returned, monarchs resurfaced, and with every fight, my glorious king grew more cracked than before. Stronger, sharper, more terrifying. The shadows evolved with him. Like a never-ending raid, they kept winning, even after time itself got slapped backward by the cup of reincarnation. And still, they stood, victorious, waiting for whatever dared to come next. 30 damn years slipped by like a blink, and by the end of it, everything that carried destruction in its lungs had been erased. Every monarch, every nightmare, everything, except the final wall standing between peace and oblivion. The Dragon Monarch himself, and the legion of destruction that followed him like a funeral procession. And even that ended. The last war was a blood-soaked eclipse. The sky burned, the ground screamed, and when it was finally over, victory stood alone among corpses older than history. During that final massacre, one dying dragon dragged its broken body close enough to spit venom not with fire, but with words. Its breath rattled as it laughed at Ygritte. "You were once a wing of the Shadow Army," it hissed. "Now you kneel behind a human. Have you no shame?" Ygritte didn't hesitate. His blade fell, and the dragon's head followed, but the words lingered. For a moment, just one, guilt tried to climb his spine. Had he abandoned his old king? Had he turned his back on the legacy he once served? Then he remembered. Number. He hadn't forgotten. The past simply stopped mattering. My glorious king had given him something the old era never could. Purpose without chains, loyalty without obligation. The legend of the former monarch no longer lived in his mind rent-free. The silence left behind wasn't emptiness. It was peace. After the war, my glorious king met with Jin Chul. They spoke quietly, they parted cleanly, and once they were alone, Ygritte finally asked the question that had been sitting in his chest. Why didn't you tell him the truth? The answer came calmly, without drama. Forgetfulness is a gift from the gods, my glorious king said, even if it was built by men using tools they were never meant to touch. Ygritte nodded. He understood. He also understood something else. Unlike greed and iron, who chose comfort, rest, and quiet lives in the remade world, Ygritte stayed. Loyalty was never a leash to him. It was a choice. And he chose my glorious king not as a master, but as his truth. Battlefield or classroom, war or homework, it didn't matter. He would never leave his side. Which was why, when his king faced a new kind of enemy, exams, Ygritte stood ready. The answer to question 14 is 1, not 2. My glorious king corrected it instantly. This burden had fallen to Ygritte because, frankly, the rest of the marshals were useless. One was a brute with muscles where thoughts should be. The other was literally a bug. That left Ygritte, honor-bound, precise, academically gifted. Top of his class at the Knight Academy. No shame in saying it. Then the scene shifted. My glorious king's father sat alone, staring into nothing, his face worn by thoughts that never slept. Gates haunted him, those massive portals that vomited monsters into the world. Clear a dungeon, and you had 1 hour before the door shut. He hadn't made it. He'd been trapped in the space between worlds. Lost, forgotten. While drifting in that nothingness, the rulers reached out. They offered power, a mission, stop the monarchs. Then one of them, the flashiest, loudest of the bunch, gave him another task: protect the Shadow Monarch. That was why he returned years later, fists flying beside his son in a war that should never have existed. He apologized once, then again, for leaving, for failing, for forcing his son to walk through hell alone. My glorious king answered with only 3 words, and suddenly the air felt heavy. His father tried to smile, said he was proud, said his son was strong, but the pain bled through the pauses between words. Time was running out. He wished they had more of it, said sorry again, as if repetition could stitch broken years back together. Cut to a quiet apartment. My glorious king's mother and sister sat at the table. The door flew open, and a tiny version of him came sprinting inside, screaming for his dad. That word hit him like a blade. Dad! He froze. My glorious king watched silently as tears fell. Quiet, ugly, uncontrollable. His parents noticed. He lied, said it was just a nightmare. His father cried without sound, mourning a life he barely touched. Time shifted again. A peaceful cafe. Across the table sat one of the rulers wearing a human shell. They spoke of choices, of worlds, of what mattered. My son chose this world, the father said. Every second of it. The ruler tilted its head. Do you want to forget him? He nodded, because his son asked him to. The ruler smiled faintly, like father, like son. Then came the final truth. No more interference. No more rulers. The show was over. It even admitted it had enjoyed watching the chaos unfold. One last gift. Anything he wanted. Without hesitation, the father answered, erase it all. The ruler paused, asked why. Pretending hurts, he said simply, acting like I don't know my son is the Shadow Monarch. It eats at me. I just want to be a normal dad. Worry about school, about jobs, not the end of the world. To him, my glorious king wasn't a god. He was just his boy. The ruler nodded, promised that once it left, everything from the lost timeline would vanish. No pain, no pretending, just a father and his son. As it walked away, it prayed peace would find the man who was about to forget everything. Time moved on. Now, inside a loud, overcrowded cafe packed with freshmen who didn't know how to shut up, a welcome party was in full swing. Drinks everywhere, tables shaking. Chaos alive and thriving. And in the middle of it all sat Jinho, stiff, nervous, rich enough to buy the place, but absolutely unprepared to survive it, like a deer sitting calmly at a gun range. The smell of sizzling pork belly crawls into his nose, greasy and loud, and for reasons Jinho can't explain, it hits him straight in the brain. Comfort, familiarity, almost like home. He doesn't even get time to unpack that feeling before some upperclassman shoulder checks him and tells him to relax. The guy doesn't apologize, just laughs it off and starts talking like they're friends. He says there's a real monster in their department, not loud, not flashy, not arrogant, just terrifying by existing. The kind of guy who doesn't need to raise his voice, because the room already shuts up for him. Jinho nods along, eyes unfocused. He barely hears the words. His mind circles around a single thought. Nothing is scarier than him. The conversation drifts, like pointless background noise. The senior starts gossiping instead, lowering his voice like he's spilling national secrets. Apparently there's a campus legend, some absurd idol-athlete hybrid girl everyone worships. Jinho mutters a name half-heartedly. The senior's eyes light up, points across the room, says, yeah, that's her. And by the way, she's dating the scary guy. Before Jinho can even process that information, the air shifts. The temperature drops. Not metaphorically, actually drops. My glorious king walks in and sits down, like the world rearranged itself, just to give him a chair. No rush, no tension, just ownership. Both Jinho and the senior freeze mid-breath. The senior suddenly remembers he has urgent business somewhere very far away and vanishes instantly, leaving Jinho abandoned like a sacrifice. My glorious king slides a glass across the table. Jinho stares at it like it might explode. Soju, clear, innocent, suspicious. He drinks, stops. That's not alcohol. Confused, he looks up. My glorious king meets his eyes with that lazy, soul-crushing stare. Says if Jinho can't even hold a drink, what exactly is he so nervous about? Then he pours more like he's offended by the weakness. Casually adds that Jinho should stop calling him Sunbai. From now on, he says, use my name. Jinho's brain short-circuits. His mouth betrays him. The name slips out before his thoughts catch up. Clean, natural, like muscle memory. And that's when the unease hits. It feels too easy, too familiar, like he said that name 1,000 times before. But that's impossible. So why does it feel right? And worse, how does my glorious king already know his name? No explanation comes. Just a raised glass. Jinho clinks it without thinking. Something settles between them. Unspoken. Heavy. Cut. Now my glorious king is walking fast, phone glued to his ear, stride sharp like he's late for war. On the other end, Jinho sounds pissed, complaining that he ditched the department lounge event. Demanding to know where he is, my glorious king says he had something to handle, tells Jinho to cover for him during the afternoon lecture. Jinho tries to object, gets shut down instantly. My glorious king adds that he's on a field trip. Before he can ask, the call ends. A calm voice saying he's counting on him. Elsewhere, Mami Juhi crosses campus with stress written all over her posture. She made it into a Seoul university, but her accent feels like it's screaming at everyone. She overthinks every sentence, tries to sound proper, complains that nursing classes drown her in English. Everything feels harder than it should be. Then my glorious king passes right in front of her. No words, no dramatic music, just a feeling. Something clicks wrong in her chest. like she saw someone important without knowing why. He keeps walking, unbothered, like gravity doesn't apply to him. She stops dead and blurts out, asking if they've met before. He turns just enough to look at her, says no, calm voice, faint smile, nothing revealed. He walks away. She stands there, embarrassed, annoyed, confused as hell, wonders why she spoke to a stranger at all, shakes it off and keeps moving. But something sticks in her head, like a word she almost remembers but can't reach. Scene shift, hospital hallway. A doctor trudges forward like life has personally wronged him. He stops at a guarded room, nods to security, gets waved through without question. Inside lies Gun-hee, the OG chairman. Man looks like he aged 50 years in a week. He tries to sit up and immediately regrets it. The doctor rushes in. This is clearly the one patient he actually gives a damn about. Then he notices the bottle. Weird, out of place. He points at it and asks what the hell it is. Chairman Go smiles like a man holding forbidden knowledge. Says some kid stopped by and left it. The doctor frowns. Security didn't log anyone. Gun-hee laughs softly and says, yeah, the kid slipped past them anyway. Like it was nothing. Then it gets stranger. The kid claimed that in another timeline, one that doesn't exist anymore, they fought monsters together, side by side. This bottle was a goodbye gift. Then he vanished. The doctor looks ready to throw the bottle out the window. Asks if Gun-hee seriously believes that nonsense. The old man sighs. Says it doesn't matter. He's dead either way if he doesn't drink it, so screw it. He asks how long he has left. The doctor says nothing. Gun-hee smirks. Says if he dies, just carve on his grave that he fought until the end. Then he drinks it, all of it, leans back, closes his eyes. Says he needs a nap. The doctor leaves, emotionally exhausted, tells staff to call him if anything weird happens. Time passes. Morning light creeps in and touches Gun-hee's face. He opens his eyes. Death isn't there. He breathes deep, smiles at the sky, whispers that winter hasn't come yet. And while Gun-hee is realizing he just bought himself a few extra years, somewhere far beyond Earth, in a far uglier timeline, Dragon Daddy decides it's his turn to talk. He goes full narrator mode. First monarch, born in darkness, strongest of all, king of dragons, ruler of destruction, feared across dimensions, worshipped, respected. Basically a cosmic narcissist with divine stats and zero humility. But this story isn't about that. This is about the moment he was chilling in a dimensional crack with millions of soldiers, plotting Earth's destruction, and suddenly woke up inside the body of a weak, fragile human. Dragon Daddy takes one look at the mirror and nearly throws up on principle alone. This body is an insult. Weak frame. Frail muscles, a face that looks like it would lose a staring contest with a wet napkin. And the worst part? He's not even some seasoned warrior. He's a teenage boy, an E-rank hunter, working himself half to death in a tiny speck of a country called South Korea. The audacity. Fuming, he digs through Jinwoo's memories like he's scrolling through trash files. Years of suffering flash by, endless hospital visits, crushing debt, a missing father who went out for milk and straight up deleted himself from reality, a sick mother, a little sister depending on him, a life built entirely on exhaustion and quiet despair. And that makes Dragon Daddy laugh, because to him curing a human illness is a joke, child's play. If he were in charge, Jinwoo's mother would have been healed with a lazy flick of a claw. No effort, no drama, just fixed. But he shrugs the thought away, deciding humans are strange creatures who insist on suffering even when solutions exist. Weird species, weird habits. Still, the existential dread creeps in. This body is fragile, temporary, mortal, the incarnation of destruction reduced to rent, debt, and muscle soreness. Then, his phone starts ringing. He stares at the device like it personally offended him, picks it up, instantly gets blasted by some woman yelling on the other end, demanding to know where the hell he is because the raid is about to start. And just like that, Dragon Daddy's first real experience of human life hits him square in the face. He's late for work. The call keeps going. The woman presses him harder, snapping that he's running late. And see, here's the thing. Antares, monarch of destruction, devourer of worlds, does not tolerate incompetence, especially not being accused of it by a mere human woman. The rage spikes. In a voice so deep and commanding it could scare gods into therapy, he growls, "Where am I supposed to show up?" The woman pauses, confused by Jinwoo's sudden voice upgrade. Still, she answers, telling him to get to the gate. And that's when Dragon Daddy's patience fully snaps. Who does this bitch think she's talking to? With a casual flick of his will, he performs a full planetary scan. No effort, no strain, just instant location lock. Man literally runs divine GPS on a single human out of spite. Then he calmly says, "I have found you." She has absolutely no idea what that means. He hangs up. Seconds later, Dragon Daddy appears right behind her and asks in the calmest tone imaginable if he's late. She damn near leaves her soul behind. He scans the room unimpressed. Weak auras, frail bodies. Every single one of them looks breakable. One idiot even waves at him and asks if he's eaten yet. And Terry stares at the man, seriously debating whether this is a subordinate or just a walking corpse with confidence issues. Then he strides over to the coffee guy and demands a cup. The man, bold as hell, looks him dead in the eye and says there's no coffee. While actively holding a steaming cup, Dragon Daddy doesn't argue. He simply takes it, sips it, and states, like it's a universal law, that the strong take from the weak because that's basic monarch logic. Everyone just stares at Jinwoo, wondering why he's acting extra unhinged today. Then Jui arrives, immediately scolding him for getting injured again. Dragon Daddy lets her rant, mentally noting that humans are incredibly loud for creatures with such short lifespans. Before it gets too awkward, Mr. Kim gathers everyone and casually asks if they're cool with him leading today's raid. Everyone agrees. He's experienced, reliable. But Dragon Daddy isn't listening. He's staring at the dungeon. Gates on Earth were always tools of the rulers. Cheap tricks. But this gate is different. It's leaking Monarch energy, and that makes his instincts scream. As he steps closer, some guy, aware of Jinwoo's legendary streak of getting absolutely demolished, asks him to please not get injured this time. That single sentence earns him Dragon Daddy's approval. The moment they enter the gate, the monsters don't stand a chance. Antares tears through them like they're made of papier-mâché. One blink, monsters alive. Next blink, corpses everywhere. The rest of the hunters just stand there, weapons ready, no targets. Their scrawny crybaby just soloed the dungeon. Now everyone's confused. Were today's monsters weak, or did Jinwoo unlock Ultra Instinct off-screen? Dragon Daddy crushes a goblin's skull and turns to the group with a look that says, "We're going deeper." Mr. Kim tries to suggest a vote. Antares shuts him up instantly. No discussion, no democracy, just raw authority. He looks at the others and asks if anyone else wants to vote. Shockingly, no one does. They move forward. As time drags on, anxiety spreads. They've been walking nearly an hour. The gate should have been cleared by now. Something feels wrong. Then they reach it. A massive door. The kind of door that screams enter and die horribly. Even Dragon Daddy feels the power pouring out from behind it. Ungodly, ancient, dangerous. While the others panic and argue, he yanks the door open and, to prove a point, grabs the tracksuit-wearing idiot and hurls him inside like a test subject. Tracksuit guy starts screaming curses midair. Dragon Daddy just watches, unimpressed. Dragon Daddy turned back to the group and announced it plainly, like he was explaining gravity to toddlers. "Look, the moron's still breathing. That means it's safe to enter." And just like that, the poor bastard shuffled inside. The moment they crossed the threshold, torches ignited one by one along the walls. Flames blooming in sequence like some low-budget horror movie trying way too hard to be scary. The light revealed it, that nightmare fuel centerpiece. The massive stone statue looming over the chamber, frozen in a pose that screamed, "You are about to regret your life choices." The hunters started murmuring immediately, whispering, comparing vibes, talking about how this dungeon felt wrong, too heavy, too intentional, like it was watching them. Some of them pointed at the giant statue, speculating that it must be the boss they'd eventually have to fight. Dragon Daddy glanced at it once, unimpressed. Then he casually pointed at a different statue. "No," he said flatly. That was the one they should really be pissing their pants over. As Antares' eyes landed on the statue of the architect, he stepped closer and began reading the inscription carved into the stone. Ancient language, old rules, familiar nonsense. Unfortunately, the hunters wouldn't shut the hell up. To them, this writing might as well have been quantum physics written in hieroglyphics. They stared at it like cows watching math. Dragon Daddy felt something in his skull twitch violently. The sheer stupidity in the room was causing him actual psychic damage. How could creatures this useless not read something so basic? He forced himself to refocus and read again, when suddenly Jui grabbed his arm. Her grip was tight. Her voice was shaking. "Jinwoo." The statue moved. Dragon Daddy didn't even look. He shrugged her hand off like an inconvenience and kept reading. The commandments were exactly the same holy garbage as before. First, worship the god. Second, praise the god. Third, prove your faith. Same cult nonsense. Same manipulation. Same fake divinity dressed up as law. Antares turned to the group and summarized it in a way even these idiots could understand. "Anyone who doesn't follow these rules," he said calmly, "will be leaving this dungeon in a body bag." The second the words left his mouth, the giant statue behind them activated. Its eyes flared. Then the laser beams fired. But Dragon Daddy wasn't just angry anymore. He was nuclear. How dare this glorified rock mock him with power this pathetic? How dare a fake god built by a wannabe creator think it could judge him, roaring like the embodiment of middle fingers everywhere? Dragon Daddy charged forward and took the blast head on. The beam smashed into him, and instead of dodging, he spread his stance, shielding the hunters behind him. Not that he actually cared if they lived, but instinct was instinct. Then he showed them what real power looked like. Destruction breath ignited. And the statue didn't just break, it ceased to exist. Stone vaporized. Structure collapsed. Power erased. The hunters were frozen in place, pants metaphorically and possibly literally soiled. Steam rolled off Dragon Daddy's body. His claws were out. His breath hissed like a kettle possessed by Satan. His eyes burned red, so red they made hell look underlit. At this point, no one was sure if the dungeon or Jinwoo was the bigger threat. Then the other statues activated. They charged. Dragon Daddy grinned. New toys. He met them head-on, laughing, taunting, tearing through stone like it was wet cardboard. Every punch shattered bodies. Every kick reduced ancient monuments to rubble. And just to be extra disrespectful, he mocked their speed while doing it. Too slow, too weak, too boring. He didn't just destroy them, he humiliated them. Stone crumbled. Dust filled the air. The hunters ran for their lives, desperately wondering if there was a safer career path they should have taken. Dragon Daddy, meanwhile, was having the time of his life. When the last statue fell, he stood atop a mountain of rubble, cracked knuckles, and complained that the fight hadn't even warmed him up. That was when the architect finally snapped. Dragged out of hiding, the knockoff dungeon master materialized, clutching a stone tablet like a theater kid with a prop. He screamed, demanding to know who Dragon Daddy thought he was, then shattered the tablet in rage, crying about how long it took to build all this, only for it to get bulldozed. Antares didn't let him finish. He punched him mid-sentence, square in the face. Shut up. No patience, no respect, no mercy for a fake god playing creator. He demanded the real authority show itself, while his fists made the same request repeatedly. That's when Shadow Daddy arrived. Seizing control of the giant statue like a personal mech, he spoke about destiny, about inevitability, about how they were bound to fight someday. Today was as good a day as any. He rose from his throne and declared their connection would end here. Dragon Daddy was thrilled. A worthy opponent? A real fight? Gods might finally bleed. He leapt forward, charging an attack so powerful it could have traumatized the universe. And then, Jinwoo woke up, in his bed. Heart pounding, sweating, confused. What kind of dream was that? He checked the room. Everything normal. Everything safe. He sighed in relief. Around him, his shadows watched quietly, concern written all over their faces. And just like that, by waking up, Jinwoo robbed us of what could have been one of the greatest fights in the entire series. We snap back to the current timeline, inside a police station buzzing with low voices and stale coffee, where Lee Si-han is sitting stiff as hell, trying not to look like a rookie who might throw up at any second. From his very first day, he'd heard the rumor, the kind that sticks to the walls like mold and refuses to die. A man everyone called the Ghost, a walking legend in violent crimes. The kind of investigator who solved cold cases, locked room murders, and impossible crimes like he was speedrunning reality itself. A 200% arrest rate. Criminals allegedly folded the moment he made eye contact. Some officers swore he wasn't human at all, just death wearing a suit and badge. There was even talk that he turned down promotions on purpose, choosing to stay in the field. That part messed with Lee the most. Who in their right mind says no to rank, money, and power? Right as Lee is spiraling internally, an officer strolls over mid-crisis, cheerful like this is just another Tuesday, and greets him by name. Investigator Lee Si-han, welcome aboard. New meat on the chopping block. He flashes a grin and hands Lee a drink, telling him to relax because the station's basically family. Lee nods, pretending his soul isn't trying to leave his body, and casually mentions that the captain already partnered him with someone named Investigator Sung. The smile on the officer's face drops instantly. You mean the Ghost? Lee freezes like he's just been read his execution date. The officer laughs it off, saying the nickname started as a joke, but spread like wildfire across departments. Then he points at the coffee cup in Lee's hand and adds, almost apologetically, that was actually for him. Before Lee can process that or mourn the coffee theft, the temperature in the room drops. No dramatic entrance, no footsteps, just pressure, a presence. He walks in, calm, silent, lethal. The Ghost himself, my glorious king. No one speaks, but the entire room shifts around him, like gravity just changed direction. The officer straightens up instantly, introduces Lee in a rush, and pats the rookie on the back like this might be the last time they speak. He tells my glorious king to train the newbie well, then pieces out like a man escaping a cursed house. Lee follows behind, terrified, wondering if this living myth is about to murder him over stolen caffeine. Out of nowhere, my glorious king breaks the silence. He asks casually why Lee joined the force. Lee swallows. To catch bad guys. The king of quiet smiles just a little and says, then that's what we'll do. And just like that, Lee Si-han walks out of the station side by side with a legend. Days blur together after that. When Lee finally shows his face back at the station, he looks like he's been dragged behind a truck. Another officer asks, what the hell happened? Someone laughs and says the rookie's been non-stop chasing low-level crooks with Investigator Sung. No breaks, no mercy. My glorious king stands nearby, calm as ever, secretly enjoying the chaos. He remembers Lee bragging once about taking down an armed robber barehanded. That memory made the training way more entertaining. While Lee is barely holding himself upright, my glorious king is already knee-deep in another case file when a woman bursts into the station, voice cracking. She's yelling that her friend would never take her own life. An officer tries explaining that the evidence points to suicide, but she refuses to hear it. She shoves her phone forward, showing text messages. Says no one sends messages like that if they plan to die 3 hours later. The officer stays calm, explaining that suicide doesn't always come with warnings. The room tightens. Then my glorious king steps in and asks to see the file. He flips through it, bathtub, knife in hand, only her fingerprints. History of depression. Clean case. Too clean. He looks up and says something feels off, offers to take the case anyway, just in case. He walks over, introduces himself to the woman, and asks a few questions. And once again, the ghost moves. Cut to a gloomy apartment building under dead skies, the kind of place where silence feels heavy. Inside the unit, my glorious king scans the room with eyes sharp enough to cut through lies. No forced entry, no mess, just faint bloodstains. He thinks how once upon a time he needed a full corpse for this. But those days ended when all the Monarchs did. Now, even a few drops of blood are enough. Shadow magic seeps into the room. From the stains, a figure rises. A girl forms slowly, flickering like she's unsure she wants to exist. She gasps, panicked, looking around. My glorious king speaks calmly, telling her she's free now. Free from pain, free from dying. Then he asks the question that matters. Did you do this to yourself? She nods, says yes, says it was her choice. He pauses, then asks why. Her eyes fall and she begins to speak. Scene cut. A man hears his doorbell, checks the camera, sees an investigator holding a badge. My glorious king says he wants to ask about the man's daughter. The door flies open instantly. The father asks if they found something, anything. They end up sitting across from each other in a quiet cafe, tension sitting between every word. My glorious king asks what kind of student she was. The man struggles, says she was kind, liked by everyone, had no enemies, too gentle for a world this cruel. His voice breaks, says she wasn't his by blood, but she was his daughter in every way that mattered. He wishes she'd said something, anything. My glorious king listens, then pulls out a recording. We found this, he says calmly, and presses play. At first, the man sitting across from him tries to hold on to that fake toughness, the kind people wear when they think anger can scare the truth away. But the moment the recording plays and her voice fills the space, young, fragile, trembling, everything cracks. It's Jin-Yi. She talks about the hell she lived through, about the man who was supposed to protect her, who instead dragged her through years of quiet suffering, about finally running away, putting distance between herself and that nightmare, only for it to crawl back into her life anyway. One single message, one reminder of his existence. That was all it took to break her spirit again. That was the moment she decided she was done trying to live. The man's expression twists, not with guilt, but with rage. He slams his hand on the table and snaps at my glorious king, demanding what the point of this little performance is. You trying to arrest me? Fine. Bring backup. Put the cuffs on. My glorious king doesn't flinch. He just looks at him with that dead, frozen stare, the kind that makes people instinctively lower their voices. You have two choices, he says calmly. Confess and come with me, or pay the price. The man laughs, leaning back like he's figured it out. Says, so that's it. You want money. How much? That's when the temperature drops. That will be enough, my glorious king says, his voice sinking lower. He explains it slowly, deliberately. This isn't the world the man remembers. It looks the same, sure, but it isn't real. It's a reflection, a mirror of the living world, a place that belongs to the dead. No one enters unless the master allows it. Then he meets the man's eyes and finishes it. You're already trapped. The man freezes, blinks, looks around. The cafe lights are on, but the room is empty. No sound, no people, no exit. Panic explodes across his face. He starts shouting, asking who my glorious king is, screaming that this has to be a dream. Then he runs. The floor betrays him. Shadows surge upward, wrapping around his limbs like living chains. He thrashes, screams, claws at the darkness, but no one comes. Blood splatters the wall. Then silence. Behind my glorious king, a figure forms. Jin-Yi stands there, faint but steady now. She thanks him, her voice soft, almost peaceful. He asks if there's anything else she wants to say. She nods. Just one favor. Later, back at the station, my glorious king hands a small package to Jin-Yi's only real friend, the one who never stopped believing her. He tells her Jin-Yi left something behind, that the case is closed. The girl's hands shake as she holds the box. She asks quietly if it was really suicide. My glorious king gives a small nod. She opens the package and breaks down completely. Her thanks barely escape her throat as he turns and walks away. Alone with his thoughts, the questions creep in. What if that message had never arrived? What if she'd never seen it? Would she still be laughing with her friends? Would there have been candles and cake instead of a bathtub and blood? The scene shifts. A restaurant bathed in soft lights and overpriced vibes. Across the table, Jinho sits locked in like he's about to announce a world-ending event. Then he drops it. He's going to propose to Gina. My glorious king blinks, slowly processing reality. Jinho pulls out a diamond ring, holding it up proudly, asking if Gina will like it. The king stares at it with zero romance and says, honestly, he has no idea. Jinho laughs, already expecting that answer, and says it's fine. He's got backup gifts anyway. Then casually, he mentions he's planning to build an entire hospital on company land just for Gina after she graduates. My glorious king pauses, asks if that project is going to cost around 30 billion. Jinho nearly chokes, demands to know how he knew that exact number. The king just shrugs, acting mysterious, while mentally flashing back to the old timeline, where that same detail was casually mentioned. He tells Jinho he's doing too much. He doesn't need grand gestures, he just needs to stay himself. Jinho tears up instantly and asks for a hug. No, my glorious king says immediately. Jinho hugs him anyway like a man clinging to life. Hours later, chaos waits at home. Cha opens the door exhausted while baby Suho is bouncing around like sleep is a myth. She asks if he went drinking. He says he met Jinho, who's deep in proposal mode. Cha raises a brow, asks if he actually did it. The king smirks and says they'll see if Jinho has the guts. Then the shadows start acting up. Bellion pops out demanding sword training. Igris fires back about education. My glorious king shuts them both down, telling them to wait until Suho can at least walk. Cha watches him and tells him maybe he should come home earlier if he wants to witness milestones like that. Next morning, he drags himself into the station half dead. Chief Gentile tells him to stop interfering in other cases and accidentally calls him Hunter. Not anymore, my glorious king says flatly. Gentile shrugs, says the title still fits, Then things get serious. A guardian connected to a suicide case vanished. All nearby cameras mysteriously glitched. My glorious king demands answers. Jinchul plays dumb, then slides over a card. Information on Chairman Go Gun-hee. Critical condition. At the hospital, Go Gun-hee looks like a man who's lived too many lifetimes. When my glorious king enters, the chairman reaches for his oxygen mask. The king helps remove it. Go Gun. He smiles faintly and whispers that he's glad to see him again. He said he had been searching for him for a very, very long time. Without hesitation, my glorious king pulled out a healing potion and offered it to him, like it was the most natural thing in the world. No drama, no second thoughts. But Go Gun-hee slowly shook his head. He didn't want it. He said he had already lived long enough. His body was tired, but that wasn't what weighed on him the most. What he truly wanted was to remember. Not this peaceful world. Not this rewritten timeline. He wanted the world before, the one my glorious king once spoke about in fragments and half words. The king warned him. Those memories weren't warm. They weren't heroic highlights and happy endings. They were soaked in blood, loss, and impossible choices. But Gun-hee didn't hesitate. He said he wanted all of it. The pain, the truth, every stolen memory that had been taken from him. So, my glorious king reached out and took his hand, and the floodgates burst open. Gun-hee remembered everything. He remembered standing beside him, shoulder to shoulder. The hunters they saved, the wars they survived, the negotiations that decided the fate of nations, the exhaustion that never truly faded. He remembered what he really was back then. A fragment of brilliant light, shining even in the darkest age. He remembered the final battlefield, the crushing cold of the Monarch of Frost, his own death, and the way he begged my glorious king with his final breath to protect the world just one last time. Tears streamed freely now. He thanked him, said it was an honor to fight alongside legends like him, said that even if his body turned cold beneath the warm sunlight, these memories would keep him warm forever. Then he closed his eyes. My glorious king didn't move, didn't speak. He simply stood there in silence, offering a final bow, a real one, a hero to the very end. Time slipped forward. My glorious king walked without direction, lost in thought, until his phone rang. Mommy Cha's voice exploded through the speaker. Panicked, breathless, on the edge of losing it. She said something was wrong with Suho. The king froze. Then she said it. The kid was flying, not hopping, not bouncing, flying, straight up defying gravity and common sense. In the background, the house was absolute chaos. Bellion and Igris were cheering like proud uncles at a sports festival, hyping the kid up, while Cha was screaming and trying to catch her airborne menace of a son. My glorious king repeated the word, flying slowly, like it personally insulted him. That's when Jinho's old joke hit him, about how any kid born from him and Mommy Cha would probably start running laps before birth. Turns out Jinho was right, and had absolutely cursed them. Cha asked what they should do. The king sighed and told her to relax. He'd teach Suho how to fly properly, step by step. There was a pause. Then Cha asked when exactly he learned how to fly. Back at the hospital, doctors gently delivered the final update to Gun-hee's wife. Still on the call, my glorious king reflected quietly. When autumn ends, winter comes. And after winter, spring always follows. Endings lead to new beginnings. He heard Cha struggling on the other end and promised he'd be home early. In his heart, he knew it. Their winter hadn't come yet. Back home, Bellion and Igris were already at it again. Bellion argued that aerial combat training needed to start immediately. Igris shot back that the boy was clearly destined to be a pilot instead. Cha was on the floor, cleaning like a war veteran who hadn't slept in days. As Mommy Cha lived her chaotic domestic arc, the scene dragged itself back to a cursed old timeline. Jeju Island, pure madness. As monsters tore through everything, she stood there in silence, staring at a single egg that radiated main character energy. She gave it the Chosen One speech, told it to grow strong, to become the colony's nightmare. Basically said, go out there and clap anything that breathes. Fast forward. Our favorite overgrown bug finally emerged. Baru pulled up to the hive like he owned the place, looked around, and dropped the coldest line imaginable. No kings here. Then he turned to the terrified humans and asked if anyone had the guts to call themselves a king. That's when he locked eyes with Mr. Aura Farmer himself. My glorious king smirked and delivered pure disrespect. Now you're finally acting like an insect. That line lived rent-free in Baru's head forever. And now history was repeating itself. Suho stood before him with that same calm, steady stare, like a kid who's seen worse things in his breakfast cereal. Baru got so confused, he immediately noped out and flew away. But Suho chased him, persistently, relentlessly. Baru tried ignoring him. Didn't work. Eventually, he just gave up, wondering why this tiny menace wouldn't leave him alone. That's when Igris slid out of the shadows, smooth as ever, and explained it. You're a giant talking ant with wings, he said. You're basically a living action figure. Baru paused. Yeah, that checks out. Everything suddenly made sense. Over in the Shadow Realm, Marshal Baru showed up to the dwarves working on a massive project. He had feedback. The statue for his king's birthday had been locked in for months, but Baru wanted wanted improvements. The dwarves lit up instantly. One even asked if they could bring in Demon Castle labor for extra help. Baru waved it off. Do what you must. He had other matters to attend to. Cut to a quiet neighborhood near my glorious king's house. A group of absolute clowns sat in a car, hyping themselves up to do something incredibly stupid. One of them hesitated, asking if messing with that guy was really a good idea. Their boss rolled his eyes. That man wiped out their entire organization. The least they could do was send a message. The plan? Fake robbery. No real goal. Just cruelty. Maybe hurt the wife and kid while they were at it. Straight cartoon villain logic. But the moment they stepped out of the car, something felt wrong. One of them whispered, voice shaking, "This place feels cursed." Like someone deliberately left the front door wide open just to see which idiots were brave or stupid enough to walk in. Without wasting a second, these clowns hop the wall and sneak onto the property. Hearts pounding, egos inflated. In their heads, they're already celebrating, thinking they've cracked the secret to robbing royalty. Easy score. Clean hit. In and out. But something's wrong. The boss slows down. That gut instinct finally kicks in. He turns around expecting his full squad behind him. And freezes. Only one man is still there. The boss blinks once, twice. His mouth opens. Where the hell did everyone go? He never finishes the thought. A massive shadow crashes down over him, swallowing the light whole. He turns, breath catching in his throat, and comes face to face with pure nightmare fuel. Baru, full form, no restraint, no mercy. A massive claw clamps around his skull like a five-finger face hug, straight out of a horror movie. Baru leans in close, voice low, calm, almost polite. "Be quiet," he whispers. The young master just fell asleep. The boss's entire body starts shaking like a phone vibrating on silent. Baru's eyes gleam as he studies that frozen expression of terror. He knows that face. He's seen it 1,000 times, right before the end. "And bugs like you," Baru continues casually, "don't get to interrupt nap time. Cut. We don't see what happens next. We don't need to. Pest control has been activated." The story shifts back to the Shadow Realm, where the dwarves are in full grind mode. Final bolts tightened, hammers ringing, sparks flying. They're finishing something massive, something sacred. One dwarf runs up to Baru, practically glowing with pride. "It's done," he says. "Completely finished. What do you think?" Baru stares. His bug eyes light up like disco balls. "It's perfect," he says, voice thick with pride. "Majestic, glorious, a gift worthy of our legend. And maybe, one day, when the young master walks these lands, he'll see it too. Big moment, big emotions. Then, a noise. Small, soft. Everyone turns. And somehow, Suho is just standing there, in the middle of the dungeon like he spawned in on creative mode. Baru stares at him, brain fully blue-screened, unable to comprehend how this child casually ignores space, time, and common sense. Hard cut. Time jumps forward. Mommy Cha sits in a quiet classroom visiting Suho's school. The teacher slides a sketchbook across the table, like it's a confidential report. These are Suho's drawings. Cha flips through them, smiling, until she stops. One drawing hits her like a brick, a giant ant, standing upright, holding something that looks suspiciously like a weapon. The teacher explains, completely unfazed, "We asked him to draw a friend. This is what he made." Cha squints. Her soul leaves her body just a little. Before she can start interrogating the crayons, the teacher flips a few more pages. These are drawings of his family. The last one shows a house, but the base looks wrong. Dark, deep, like something is living underneath it. "We asked him why he drew it this way," the teacher continues. "And Suho said that's where his friends, his family, and Big Dad live." The teacher hesitates. "I thought it might be concerning, but honestly, Suho's a happy kid. His art just hits different." Back to the adult world. The police station is loud, chaotic, buzzing with caffeine and stress. The moment my glorious king walks in, the entire room erupts into applause. Promotion secured. Someone slaps him on the back, telling him it's his turn to treat everyone. Later, as he sits down at his desk, a coworker finally asks the question everyone's been holding in. "You turned this down so many times. Why accept it now?" My glorious king smiles faintly. "I ran out of excuses." The coworker leans back. "Don't you want more? Higher rank, better pay." For a split second, memories flash. Days when he made more money than elite lawyers by deleting monsters for fun. But he just chuckles. "I'll buy you lunch today," he says. "So stop sweet-talking me." That night he's home, flipping through Suho's sketchbook again. And now that he's really looking, it's obvious. This isn't random scribbling. The lines have structure, intent, talent. At 5 years old, the kid's different. But Mommy Cha isn't smiling. She points to the last page. Suho says there's a big dad living underground, surrounded by darkness. Does that sound familiar to you? My glorious king laughs lightly. Too lightly. Just a kid's imagination. Cha doesn't buy it. She leans in. The other kids are scared of him. He never yells, never hits, never even frowns. But when he walks toward them, they freeze. The room goes quiet. Kids feel things adults ignore, and somewhere deep inside Suho, the power of the Shadow Monarch still sleeps, a force that once ruled over death itself. If it ever fully awakens before he's ready, it could consume him. So the decision is made. We have to seal it, my glorious king says quietly. His powers, his memories, all of it, until he's strong enough. Later, Baru receives Suho's drawing of him. He holds it like a sacred relic. Every scribble feels like a goodbye letter. "May I say farewell?" he asks. My glorious king nods. Baru enters Suho's room. The boy sleeps peacefully. Baru kneels. It was an honor to serve you, he whispers. Grow strong, grow happy. Then the seal is placed. Powers fade, memories dissolve, the storm goes silent. Years pass, time moves forward, and now a teenage Suho steps into high school, loud, chaotic, alive, unaware that the shadows of legends still linger. In the middle of all that first-day chaos, Suho drifted in like background scenery. Quiet, still, completely uninterested in being perceived, while everyone else was yelling names, flexing new fits, or pretending they weren't nervous wrecks. He just walked straight through it all, like he had somewhere else to be. No rush, no curiosity. The vibe of someone who showed up because he had to, not because he cared. Inside the hallway, it was pure disorder. Lockers slamming, voices overlapping, awkward reunions that should have stayed in the past. In one classroom, a guy named Lee Yunel was laughing it up with old middle school friends, acting like the king of nostalgia, right up until Suho walked in. Tall, sharp-eyed, expression locked in neutral, like the air itself had personally offended him. They shook hands, but it didn't feel friendly. It felt like a ceasefire. Lee had heard rumors. This guy was supposed to be dangerous, maybe useful, maybe annoying. He hadn't decided yet. As Lee scanned the room, mentally sorting people into categories like future followers or future victims, his eyes landed on Suho again. Still quiet, still detached, still absolutely unbothered. Suho looked up, met his stare, calm, blank, not even curious enough to flinch. That was all it took. Lee snapped. "Did you see that look?" he hissed to his boys. "That smug face. He's looking down on us." That stare got under his skin in a way he couldn't explain. Before he could spiral fully into insecure villain mode, Ju stepped in. "Leave it," he said. "He went to my old school. Just trust me. Don't push him." Lee scoffed. "What, you scared?" His pride kicked into overdrive. "You got a death wish or something?" Cut. Outside. Ju was on the ground, body wrecked, like he just got jumped by a truck instead of a human. Lee stood over him, chest puffed out, feeling real proud of himself. "This is the guy you said was strong?" He laughed. What a joke. Then he asked why Ju even bothered stepping in for that quiet kid. Ju coughed, pain tearing through his ribs, and forced the words out. "Because that quiet kid was the strongest in our whole school. No one ever laid a finger on him. I stepped in because I knew how bad this could get." Lee's smile cracked. "If someone like that really existed," he growled, "I would have heard about him." And then he started swinging again. Footsteps. Everyone froze. They turned, and there was Suho, calm, still not angry, not even rushed. He walked over like he was checking on spilled coffee, not a half-dead classmate. He looked down at Ju and asked casually, "Do you think that was enough?" Ju nodded. Lee snapped his head around. "Who the hell are you even talking to?" That was his last peaceful thought. One of Lee's boys got kicked clean across the schoolyard, launched like a broken soccer ball. Gone. Another stepped up. One hit, lights out, face first into the ground. No dramatic sounds, just instant silence. Panic hit. Lee swung. Suho swatted the punch aside like it was an insect. Then came the kick. Clean, high, brutal. Lee went airborne, body folding midair before crashing down beside his unconscious squad. Done. Finished. The whole crew out cold like yesterday's trash. Suho turned back to Ju. "Since it came to this," he said calmly, "you can handle the rest." And he walked away, like nothing happened. Later in the hallway, two students whispered like non-player characters gossiping about a hidden boss fight. "Did you hear Ju beat Lee and his whole gang?" "Yeah. I heard he's been training judo since forever." "Makes sense." Cut back to reality. Suho was packing up, expression bored, like the entire school day barely registered in his brain. He thought about killing time at an internet cafe, but when he reached for the door, it wouldn't open. The handle didn't budge. Locked. Solid. Annoyed, he turned to the window, and the world outside was frozen. People mid-step, cars mid-motion. Leaves hanging in the air like paused footage. Time had completely stopped. "What?" Suho stepped back. Then the room tore open. A pitch-black portal split the air, crackling with electricity and bad intentions. The kind of energy that screamed danger and unresolved destiny. Suho thought of his father. What would he do? Probably jump in without hesitation. So Suho inhaled and walked forward. On the other side, the portal snapped shut behind him. No return, only forward. He stood in a long hallway lined with weapons, swords, spears, daggers, each glowing with floating stats like a game tutorial had just unlocked hard mode. He walked past them reading descriptions. Every weapon was special, deadly, flashy. Then he reached a dim corner. Trash gear. Weak weapons dumped like rejected DLC. Suho scoffed. Who'd even use this? Then he saw them. Gauntlets. Sleek. Sharp. Built different. They called to him. He smirked. Swords were overrated anyway. Everyone wanted to look cool. He wanted to hit harder. He grabbed them. The dungeon hummed. Time skipped. Now he was deep inside a dungeon that hadn't seen sunlight since history stopped caring. He moved carefully until he stepped into a wide hall, and the statues twitched. Armor knights lining the walls came alive. One lunged. Blade aimed straight for his chest. Suho raised the gauntlets on instinct. Metal clashed. Impact rattled his bones. But he stayed standing. He punched back, and the knight shattered like glass. A notification popped up. Level up. He didn't even look, because the hallway was now crawling with knights. Fear hit, but he crushed it. No escape, no backup. He charged, punch, dodge, smash. Another down, another level. Notifications flooded his vision. But he ignored them. He wasn't grinding. He was surviving. When it ended, the floor was buried in broken armor. Silence. The final message floated up. Level 19. Suho stood alone in the wreckage, breathing hard, sweating, alive, and just getting started. Still standing, but completely baffled, Suho sucked in a sharp breath. How the hell did I hit level 1 and still beat all that? None of it made sense. He stared down at his hands, flexing his fingers slowly. And that's when he felt it again. The dark aura around the gauntlets hadn't faded. It was still there, pulsing faintly, like a heartbeat that didn't belong to him. He lifted his head and turned toward the massive door at the end of the hall. It loomed there like a judgment waiting to happen. Suho wrapped his fingers around the handle and tightened his grip. If he wanted to survive in this world, no shortcuts, no mercy, there was only one way forward. Get stronger, no excuses. The door slammed open. The instant it did, the entire room went dead silent. No ambient noise, no dungeon hum, just pressure. At the far end stood a unit built straight out of a nightmare. Jet black armor, broad shoulders, and an aura so heavy it felt like gravity itself was leaning on Suho's spine. This thing looked like it ate final bosses for breakfast and still had room for dessert. Suho froze. His body screamed, move, but his brain was yelling, run, at full volume. The pressure pouring off this night wasn't subtle. It wasn't threatening. It was a declaration. This is the final stage. The dark knight moved slowly, deliberately, like it knew time didn't matter. Then it reached for its sword, a weapon so massive and cruel-looking, it honestly felt illegal for something to swing it that casually. Their eyes locked. Suho tried to act first, tried to throw a punch, tried to do anything. Nothing. The knight vanished. The next second, pain ripped through him. A slash so fast he didn't even process it until the dungeon detonated around him. Walls folded. Dust exploded. The entire room collapsed like it had just been erased. And then Suho was on his back, staring up at the dungeon ceiling like he'd just rage-quit reality. How am I not dead? He pushed himself up, heart pounding, only to realize he was back at the dungeon's starting point. No wounds, no damage, like nothing had happened. Almost nothing. One of the wall torches was out. Just one. Suho frowned. That was weird, but he shoved the thought aside and cracked his neck. If brute force wasn't enough, then it was time to upgrade. His gauntlets gleamed under the torchlight, but the question crept in anyway. What happens when all the flames go out? He ignored it. Round 2. He dove back in, and when he respawned, another torch was out. Okay. Now, it wasn't just weird. It was creepy. That knight was absurdly strong. Suho replayed the fight in his head, remembering how casually it handled that massive weapon. That's when he checked his inventory and froze. There it was, the same weapon. Then he saw the level requirement. You've got to be kidding me. The number was stupid high, like insultingly unfair. Later, he ran into the knights again. Same hallway, same formation, same soulless march. Suho sighed. You guys are really still here. And then it clicked. They weren't coming back to stop him. They were stuck. Respawning. On repeat. Suho's annoyance vanished instantly. His lips curled into a grin that looked borderline unhinged. Free XP forever. He went berserk. His movements sharpened. Faster. Cleaner. He dodged a slash like it was nothing and crushed a knight in full-plate armor with his bare hands. An archer tried lining up a shot. Not today. Suho blinked right next to it and erased its skull with one punch. Level up! Another. A new notification slammed into his vision. Class advancement unlocked. Accept quest? Suho didn't even hesitate. He smashed accept like it was a gotcha pull. Reality warped. Portals ripped open around him like the dungeon just got modded. A timer appeared overhead as the system message floated in. Endure the trial. The longer you last, the more points you earn. Suho flexed his fingers. A survival test. Now we're talking. His grin was feral. Eyes locked in. This wasn't a challenge anymore. It was content, and he was about to farm it dry. Chaos hit immediately. A hooded beast stepped forward. Scrawny legs, but hands blazing with fire magic. It started chanting something absolutely illegal. And then, boom, a fireball the size of a truck launched across the room. The explosion shook the dungeon like it was trying to delete the floor. Suho barely dove clear, lungs burning, body screaming. For every monster he dropped, 3 more spawned in. A cursed respawn party from hell. Then he saw them. More mages in the back, all chanting, all pointing upward. Above him, a colossal fireball began forming. Yeah, this one's not dodging. He braced, shield up, teeth clenched. The blast hit. It felt like the sun slapped him across the face. He survived, but barely. Skin smoking, bones rattling. And then a new problem landed right in front of him. A stone golem. Each step it took felt like the dungeon might collapse. Suho stared at it and dropped his shield. No more defense, no more running. He launched forward like lightning, fists flying, pure rage. The golem didn't even get a moment to react before it shattered into dust. Without slowing, Suho yanked the massive sword off his back and hurled it like it owed him money. It cleaved straight through a magic beast, detonating it into scrap, then lodged itself deep into the wall. Still not done. He grabbed a bow, charged it with mana, fired. The arrow punched through 3 monsters before they could even scream. A knight tried to sneak him. Bad idea. Suho vanished behind it and split its helmet with dual daggers, then flung the blades into 2 more enemies. No mercy. All dead. Breathing hard. Blood everywhere. Suho laughed. Who needs weapons? Real fighters use fists. The room was wrecked. Broken armor. Shattered weapons. Silence. The system chimed. Enough points earned. Class unlocked. Another message followed. Class will match accomplishments. According to the system, Suho was a stubborn menace who refused to stay down. Fighter class acquired. But the system wasn't done. A second evaluation kicked in. Time survived. Enemies annihilated. Performance off the charts. Result finalized. Hidden class unlocked. Soul Striker. Power flooded his body like a drug. But he knew it still wasn't enough. The real boss was waiting, and he wasn't ready yet. The knights began respawning. A warning flashed. Staying in one place will attract more enemies. Suho smirked. Good. Hours passed. He kept fighting. Kept killing, kept looting like he was speedrunning the dungeon's entire economy. And he didn't stop. He snatches up the loot one piece at a time, like he's finally cashing in on all the pain the dungeon's been charging him. First, the A-rank Watchman's necklace, humming with steady mana like it's proud to be chosen. Then the superior ring of the mage, slipping onto his finger as if it already knows it belongs there. And finally, last but absolutely not least, the S-rank scorching gauntlets of the fighting phantom. The moment he equips them, heat ripples through the air. Power locks in. Stats spike. This isn't gearing up anymore. This is Suho going fully loaded. Now he's stacked. Properly stacked. No holes in the build. No excuses left. He turns and walks back toward the throne room. Footsteps calm, unhurried. At the far end, Igris the Black Knight is still there, seated like an ancient executioner who never once doubted the outcome. Same posture, same silence, same overwhelming pressure. But something's different now. The air shifts the second Suho steps forward. The dungeon feels it. Igris feels it. Suho rolls his shoulders, cracks his neck, and lets a small smile slip. No fear, no nerves. Just confidence forged in repeated death and non-stop grinding. Hope I didn't keep you waiting. Then, eyes locked on the knight, voice steady and sharp, he adds the line that matters. This time, it's my turn. Level 70, and still climbing like he's allergic to stopping. The fight detonates instantly. No warm-up, no warning. Igris opens with lightning, a savage bolt screaming straight at Suho's head. Suho barely twists out of the way when, bam, the knight is already in his face. Distance erased, blade flashing. Suho swings back hard, but Igris blocks it like it's nothing, and the impact alone turns the throne room into a disaster zone. Walls crack, fire erupts, shockwaves tear through the floor. When the smoke clears, both of them are still standing. Igris attacks again. His sword cuts through the air faster than most hunters could even register. Suho weaves, steps sharp and clean, instincts screaming. But every counter misses by inches. He's fast, insanely fast, but not fast enough. That realization hits right as Igris throws a punch that launches Suho across the room like a broken doll. He slams into a pillar, stone exploding outward, and immediately pushes off it, right back into the fight, like gravity personally offended him. Igris charges. Suho doesn't dodge this time. He throws his fist forward. The hit lands, Igris blocks it. But the weight behind that punch is different, heavy, violent, real. Even through the armor, the knight feels it. For the first time, Igris takes a step back. Respect. The knight finally understands. This isn't just some strong kid. Suho is holding back without even realizing it, and Suho starts to see it too. Igris isn't like the mobs, isn't like the farmed knights. This is a true opponent, a wall, a test, and that means Suho has to stop fighting like everyone else. His mind clicks. From the very start, he had bonus stats. He always crushed enemies above his level. If every level gave him 1 point to every stat, then at level 70, he wasn't fighting like a level 70 at all. His true combat power was closer to something monstrous. The realization snaps something loose. Suho slams Igris straight through a wall, stone exploding outward like a bomb just went off, and the system absolutely loses its mind. New title unlocked. Young Monarch. All stats increased by 40. The inheritance awakens. The bloodline answers. Igris tries to rise, but Suho is already there. One punch drops him. Then another. No space, no mercy. Just relentless, overwhelming force. Fists raining down like judgment. The fight crashes into another chamber, both of them smashing through debris, refusing to fall. They stagger. They breathe. They charge again. The impact sends shockwaves so strong the room itself starts tearing apart. Igris's armor finally splits, cracks spiderwebbing across black steel. He looks at Suho now not as an enemy, but as something else entirely, the son of his glorious king, the heir. Even without full control, Suho is already walking the path of monarchs. The strength, the rage, the will, it's all there. Suho raises his arm for the final strike. Igris doesn't move. He stands tall, ready. The blow lands, and Igris shatters into light. Silence. Suho stands alone in the wreckage, fists clenched, chest heaving. Then the system chimes like it's been waiting for this moment its whole life. Level up. Suho grins and throws a fist into the air. Victory, clean, absolute, and somehow it still doesn't feel like enough. As he catches his breath, space shimmers behind him. A new portal opens. Exit? Trap? Worse? He doesn't hesitate. He steps through. The other side hits him with heat and smoke. A burning building. The D Tower in the Song District, except now it's completely engulfed in flames. The second Suho steps forward, he feels it. Something strong. Something ancient. He turns his head. 3 heads. Smoke and death coiling around them. A nightmare given form. Cerberus, gatekeeper of the demon realm. The way it stares at Suho says one thing loud and clear. This isn't over. But Suho, he just walks forward like it's another Tuesday. Cerberus tries to flex, then freezes. Behind Suho, an aura slams down like generational trauma. Suho tilts his head, glances at the 3-headed nightmare, and mentally labels it a weird statue before walking straight past it. No fear, no drama, just business. He enters the demon realm like he was bored at home, and this was the only dungeon still open past midnight. A dead quiet hallway leads him straight into a demon city on fire. Monsters everywhere, screaming, charging. 5 minutes later, it looks like a demon yard sale. Everything must go. Suho stands alone in the wreckage, expression mildly annoyed, like his food order came with the wrong side dish. He keeps climbing. Floors 10 to 30 get folded like discount laundry. By floor 50, he's wondering if maybe he's just built different. Still, he pushes on. 1 floor per hour. Then comes floor 100. He expects chaos. Instead, he sees her, regal, calm, smiling. A demon woman stands there like a queen, surrounded by armored knights. Immediate red flag. Suho jumps in, ready to erase her. When she shouts, "Wait!" she speaks human. She remembers him. She says last time, he didn't even make it this far. That stops him cold. What do you mean, last time? She dodges the question and introduces herself like this is a corporate meeting. Essel, eldest daughter of the top-ranked Reidu clan. Suho looks unimpressed. Bro came for a boss fight and got a PR manager. She explains it straight. There used to be a demon king, but after her clan hit top rank, the final boss got cancelled. Now it's just them. Essel tries to sell him on a banquet. Says the clan leader planned it just for him. But Suho isn't listening. He's staring past her, at a gate that doesn't belong. He points at it, asking the only question that matters. What is that? Essel turns. Her expression collapsed instantly. That gate wasn't supposed to exist. No warnings, no records, no schedule. It was a tear leading to another dimension, something even the demon realm wasn't meant to touch right now. Suho noticed her panic and, instead of freaking out like a normal person, just shrugged like he'd spotted an unlocked door in a hallway. Guess I'll head out, Essel snapped. She rushed forward, hands raised, voice cracking as she told him to stay, at least for the banquet. Said the party was prepared for him, that leaving like this wasn't right. Suho just smirked. Sucks, but I'm kind of too young to drink, he said casually. Also, no clue what demons even eat. Then he waved at her. A literal wave, like this whole demon realm detour was a school field trip that ran overtime. Essel smiled at the joke, instinctively, politely, but the smile didn't last. Something twisted in her chest. His words hit a nerve she didn't even realize was still exposed. A memory stirred, old, buried, unwanted. She froze. What he said matched something else, a promise whispered decades ago, right before someone vanished and never came back. It had been 60 years since anyone set foot in the demon castle. Since then, the only message they'd received from that place was an order to help carve statues. Nothing more. No explanation, no return. Before she could even process it, Suho absolutely butchered her name and clan title. Isel of the Risk clan? It was so wrong she almost laughed out of reflex. Yeah, Jinwoo definitely passed down exactly one of his remaining 2 brain cells. Father and son, both operating on shared single-core processing. Essel blinked once. Then she chuckled softly. The kind of laugh you give when you accept that this person is a walking threat to language, logic, and demon society as a whole. She wished him well. Told him to take care. Suho nodded and walked straight into the gate, wondering if this was freedom, or just the next round of suffering lining up to swing at him. It was pain. A lot of it. No light, no calm, not even a courtesy loading screen. Just darkness and hundreds of glowing red eyes snapping open at once, staring at him like a hive mind that collectively decided his day needed to be ruined. As Suho stepped forward, the ground shifted and reality set in. He was inside a massive underground hellhole, crawling with gigantic insect monsters. Big, armored, aggressively hostile. Suho sighed, clenched his fists, and charged. The dungeon turned into a slaughterhouse. Chitin cracked, limbs flew, insect guts painted the walls. Time blurred as bodies piled up. Suho kept moving, dodging, punching, swearing under his breath. What kind of cracked-out ants are these? Annoying as hell, but the levels kept coming. Small wins stacked up. Still, he could feel it. This place was endless. A grind designed to break people. Then the boss room appeared. His expression hardened. Inside the chamber was massive. Silent. Too silent. Way too big for comfort. Then Baru stepped out. Silent. Composed. Almost emotional. Suho stared. Is this bug crying? No answer. Beru lunged. They collided in a storm of fists and claws, each impact shaking the room. Suho ducked, countered, drove a brutal kick into Beru's stomach. The monster staggered, but didn't fall. Instead, it raised a hand, like it wanted to say something. Suho wasn't interested. An uppercut smashed Baru backward again. Still, the creature kept coming. Then something shifted. Baru paused, his eyes drifted, unfocused, and suddenly his wounds healed like they were never there. He charged again, faster, harder. A claw barely missed Suho's head, but obliterated the ground behind him. The power was insane. Suho steadied himself, breathing heavier now. Something was off. Baru fought like every strike hurt him emotionally, like he hated what he was doing. Suho didn't care. Another punch slammed into Baru's face. "What the hell are you?" Suho muttered. Strong enough to crush him, yet holding back. Baru snapped internally. His instincts surged. He could have killed Suho right then, easily, but he stopped, pulled it back, whispered something about losing control. Then his body gave out. Baru collapsed. Suho froze. A system message popped up. He'd leveled again. He'd won, but it didn't feel right. That monster never truly tried to kill him, like it was restrained by something deeper. Suho shook it off. A win was a win. Another gate appeared. His level stopped climbing. Maybe this was finally the exit. He stepped through. It wasn't. On the other side waited dragons, massive ones, along with monsters that looked like walking natural disasters. An entire battlefield stretched before him. No rest, no end. Suho stared, then sighed like a man who cleaned his room, only to watch his dog immediately throw up on the carpet. Unreal. He was exhausted. Muscles screaming, patience gone. But peace was illegal here. With a grunt, he charged back in, muttering that it was always some new bullshit. Monsters poured in like they were on a union schedule. One stood out, scaled, ugly, arrogant. It charged. Suho dodged and cracked its chin so hard its brain went into airplane mode. Another one, twice the size, came swinging a sword. Suho blocked. The blade shattered. He ran up its chest and smashed a knee into its jaw, folding it instantly. Then came the bear cavalry. Yes, orcs riding bears. Two charged. Suho shattered one blade, then the orc's hand, then tore through the rest like he was speedrunning a war crime. The last orc took one look and tried to run. Too bad it was bait. The ambush dropped from above. Suho dodged, but it didn't stop. A lunatic riding a dragon tried to bite his head off. He rolled clear, looked up, and froze. The sky was full of orcs, dragons, flying murder. He groaned, loudly. And then a massive orc came flying straight at him, chest out like he thought he was built different. Suho tightened his fists. "All right," he muttered. "Who's next?" Suho scoffed, clicking his tongue as he glanced at the sky full of idiots on flying monsters. "Don't tell me you're really about to take this circus into the air." The orc didn't even get the chance to answer. A massive hand came out of nowhere and slapped the orc mid-sentence like reality itself lost patience. The impact was violent, disrespectful, absolute. The orc went flying off his mount like a corrupted save file getting deleted. 1 second screaming, next second gone. No body, no dignity. Whoever did it moved fast, sharp, brutal. Every motion screamed experience. Then something nearby glowed. Not the nice kind. Not the loot drop glow. Suho turned just in time to see stone giants raining down from the sky like divine punishment. Each one hit the battlefield with an impact that shook the ground and sent shockwaves ripping outward. And standing casually on top of one of them was a figure wrapped in ornate armor, posture screaming main character syndrome. A walking ego in plate mail, the guy finally spoke, voice smooth and rehearsed like he'd practiced this intro in front of a mirror for 30 years. He said he hailed from some land of repose, whatever that meant, claimed he'd reached marshal rank, and because of that, he now had the right, no, the privilege, to throw hands on this battlefield. He looked down at Suho with a smug little smile, chin raised like he expected applause. "Can you handle me?" he asked. "At full power?" Suho didn't answer. He just stared, tired, irritated, disrespected, completely over this bullshit. Before the armored clown could finish another sentence, Suho stepped in and punched him so hard it knocked the confidence straight out of his soul. The hit landed with a crack that echoed across the battlefield. The guy flew, armor dented, thoughts erased. Suho didn't stop there. The stone giants around him folded, one by one, like dried toast snapping under pressure, and for half a second, just half, it looked like Suho might finally get a breather. Then the battlefield collapsed. A god-tier pressure slammed down out of nowhere. So heavy it felt like gravity itself decided Suho owed it money. Everything dropped. Monsters. Giants. Even the air felt heavier. Suho's knees buckled as the weight crushed him into the ground. It felt like someone dumped a mountain on his back. He gritted his teeth, shaking, barely able to lift his head. Through the pressure, he looked up, and there it was, floating in the sky like it owned reality. A massive horned shadow, tusks curling forward, body wrapped in darkness so dense it warped the space around it. It didn't need to shout. Its presence alone screamed authority. Suho stared at the overgrown goat thing, breath ragged. "So, you the boss," he muttered. It had the same weird energy as the night, as Baru, that unsettling presence that felt older than the battlefield itself. Maybe this thing was the one pulling the strings. Before Suho could connect the dots, the pressure vanished. Just like that, he sucked in a deep breath, coughing, muscles burning. For a moment he thought, all right, take out the floating ugly, wrap this up. Life laughed. From the smoke behind Tusk, 3 dragons stepped out. big ones. The kind that looked like they ate raid parties for breakfast and didn't bother cleaning their teeth after. Each one radiated that same unnatural aura. Suho tensed. This wasn't a boss fight. This was a raid. The dragons didn't waste time. Fire exploded from their mouths, turning the air around Suho into a blazing hell. Heat crashed into him from every direction. Then, a flash of light cut straight through the flames like a cheat code. It slammed into the first dragon and sent it flying. No struggle, no roar, just gone. The light zipped forward, punched straight through the second dragon's chest, and before the third could even react, deleted. All three dragons crashed to the ground like trash bags tossed off a cliff. The light stopped moving. It was Suho, standing there, calm, not even breathing hard. He didn't pose, didn't flex, didn't wait for applause. He immediately shot forward toward the next wave, ready to wreck more faces. That's when gravity said hello again. The crushing force returned, pinning him to the ground like a bad joke repeating itself. Suho snarled, muscles screaming as he clawed his way free. He leapt, landed on a wyvern midair, hijacked it like it owed him rent, and flew straight back into the chaos. And that's when he saw him, someone ahead with a face that just screamed annoying. Suho squinted. Great! He locked onto his next target and was about to end another life when something shifted. Tusk started glowing. The flames from earlier swirled together, compressing into a massive fireball floating in front of his staff. The heat alone made the air ripple. Tusk raised the weapon, not aiming at Suho, but past him. The fireball launched like a missile and slammed into a distant mountain. The entire mountain ceased to exist. Gone, vaporized, erased from the map. Suho froze, mouth open, brain shut down. That blast could have wiped out a city. Above him, Tusk hovered, watching the destruction with a satisfied nod. He noticed the look on Suho's face, the shock, the disbelief, and smiled wider. Yeah, he definitely felt cooler now that he had a staff. The battle raged on, scenes blurring as time skipped forward. Suho was deep into his murder marathon now, tearing through everything in his path like he had XP boosts permanently enabled. Nothing survived. Nothing even slowed him down. Then the shadow soldiers showed up again. And of course, that guy was among them. The same meathead Suho had already turned into a ragdoll earlier, somehow back on his feet, riding in with Jima and the dragons, grinning like he forgot how pain worked. He started trash-talking immediately, asking if that weak sauce was supposed to kill him. Suho didn't respond. He just kicked. The impact was loud enough to make the ground cry. The grin vanished. The body followed. But the clown parade wasn't done. Another one charged in, screaming about loyalty, grit, legacy, like this was a therapy session instead of a battlefield. Suho blinked. Next second, he was already behind him. One clean hit. Lights out. The rest of the shadow army froze. Suho stared at them, visibly annoyed. These idiots multiplied like pests. No matter how many he dropped, more crawled in. And worse, his stamina was finally dipping. His body screamed at him to slow down. He refused. If he wanted to win, he had to be better, sharper, stronger. Flames ignited around his fists, spiraling like a storm. He unleashed them, burning through shadows until they couldn't even regenerate. One by one, they faded. From afar, Tusk watched and realized something uncomfortable. This kid wasn't normal, not even close. And Tusk threw up a barrier, thinking it would buy him time. It didn't. Suho was already behind him mid-motion, smiling like this was a warm-up round. Bang, one hit. Tusk slammed into the ground so hard he vanished. No body, no echo, no comeback. Just gone. Silence swallowed the battlefield. Suho stood alone, mana rolling off him like heat waves. The ground was ruined. Nothing stood. Nothing breathed. He looked around. That it? Suho steadied his breathing, flexing his fingers as he checked himself over. My stats haven't changed, he realized, but my control? That's on a whole different level. He barely had time to savor the thought. The air shifted. Not wind, not mana. Something heavier. Something that pressed down on his instincts, like a warning siren screaming boss fight. Suho looked up. A shadow soldier dropped from above and landed in front of him with a weight that cracked the ground. This one was different. Bigger presence, sharper edges. The kind of enemy that didn't posture or waste time. The kind that showed up when games were over. Even Baru, overgrown nightmare ant himself, would have felt uncomfortable standing next to this thing. Suho didn't flinch. He narrowed his eyes and asked the only question that mattered. Can you talk? The soldier tilted his head, acknowledging him. Suho continued, voice steady. He wanted answers. How strong was this place, really? How deep did this rabbit hole go? The shadow spoke. Approximately 0.03%. Suho blinked once. That number was so disrespectful it almost felt like a joke. Like being told you fought for your life, only to hear it was a warm-up stretch. You serious? Suho muttered. Still, he rolled his shoulders and squared up. Fine, bring it, I'm ready. The shadow nodded once. Young lord. Before Suho could even process that title, the world exploded into motion. The blade came out fast, too fast. Suho barely dodged on instinct, steel screaming past his face. He countered immediately, swinging back as he shouted questions between blows. Why do you keep calling me that? What does it mean? What does this place have to do with me? For a split second, anger slipped in. That was all Bellion needed. The shadow was suddenly behind him. Pain detonated in Suho's side as the strike landed. It felt like getting hit by a truck wrapped in steel. His His ribs screamed, breath ripping out of his lungs. He staggered but refused to fall. Then it got worse. Bellion's sword shifted, melted, stretching into a whip of dark metal that wrapped around Suho's body and locked tight. Pressure crushed in from every angle, like he was being packaged for shipping. Still, Suho didn't panic. He waited. Pain burned through him, but his eyes stayed sharp, and the moment the tension peaked, he grabbed the weapon mid-swing. Your weapon bends, Suho thought grimly, but it only bends once before I break it. He yanked hard, stepped inside the guard, and drove a punch straight into Bellion's chest. The impact ripped through the air and detonated against the stone behind them. Bellion held his ground, so Suho followed up. A sharp kick slammed into Bellion's stomach, Suho smirking even as he landed it. "If you guard with both arms," he muttered, "your core's just begging to get wrecked." Before Bellion could recover, Suho was already moving again. Faster now, cleaner, meaner. The next hit launched Bellion like the air itself gave up trying to hold him. He crashed into the ground hard enough to fracture it, cracks spiderwebbing outward. Done. Bellion lay there, motionless, a broken action figure tossed aside after the fight. Suho stood over him, calm, almost bored. That it? If they kept trading like this, it would drag on all night, and Suho had zero interest in that. He studied Bellion, searching for something. Authority, command, control. Nothing. This wasn't the mastermind, just another elite grunt with a fancy weapon. Suho straightened, and then he saw it, high above, cutting through the clouds like it owned the sky, a massive wyvern. And sitting on its back was someone who made the air feel heavy just by existing. Their eyes met. The rider vanished. Not flew, not jumped, vanished. The next second, he was right in front of Suho, slamming into the ground with enough force to ruin the terrain. Dark energy spilled out around him, like smoke from a wound in reality. No introduction, no warning, just pressure. Suho knew instantly. This wasn't a side quest. This was the final exam. Black energy burned as the man summoned twin daggers. Suho tensed, but not because of the weapons, because of the shape. He was human. That meant maybe, just maybe, this didn't have to end in blood. Suho tried to speak. The man stayed silent. Then the real twist hit. A gate opened behind him, and it clicked. Beat him, and this ends. Finally, a way out of this cursed loop. They charged. The clash was violent enough to crack the world. Shockwaves tore rock from the ground and hurled debris into the air. Suho was driven back instantly. This strength wasn't brute force. Every strike was precise, controlled, perfect. Suho fought back, refusing to drop, but every exchange taught him something terrifying. The enemy didn't waste movement, didn't overcommit, didn't miss. It was like fighting a machine sharpened by countless deaths. As blow after blow landed, one thought echoed in Suho's mind. How many times do you have to die to fight like this? He rolled, barely dodged, forced himself back onto his feet. Pain screamed through every muscle, armor cracked, breath ragged. But his will didn't waver. My stats are capped, he realized. But my instincts, they're sharpened to madness. He saw a path. He moved. The enemy vanished again. Too late. A blur of slashes tore through him. Blood sprayed. His armor shattered. The gauntlet he'd relied on cracked apart in his hand. Suho staggered, breathing hard. Still, he couldn't look away. This man was terrifying, but beautiful. Suho felt it. Respect, raw and undeniable. He wanted to reach this level someday. Just once. To move like that. He leapt back, bracing for one last exchange. He lunged. The man dodged effortlessly, and instead of striking back, he gently tapped Suho on the head, like praise. Then came the question, calm and soft, cutting through the chaos like it meant nothing. "Did you enjoy the game?" Suho froze. That voice. It hit him like a truck. His body locked up as he slowly looked up. And there he was, his father, alive, calm, smiling, like the battlefield hadn't been burning seconds ago. Before Suho could speak, his father stepped forward and gently pushed him toward the gate. "It's still too early for you." The words hit harder than any punch. Suho reached out. Too late. The world twisted. Light collapsed inward, and Suho jolted awake at his desk, gasping for air like he'd just clawed his way back from drowning. His eyes snapped open, darting left and right on pure reflex. Sunlight flooded through the classroom windows, warm and almost offensively normal. Desks, chairs, whiteboard. No blood, no shadows, no collapsing worlds. Just the quiet hum of reality doing its thing. He slowly pushed himself upright, heart still pounding, like he had just sprinted through hell. One hand wiped across his face. The other instinctively touched his head, half expecting pain, heat, or some lingering mark from the fight. Nothing, except the phantom sensation still buzzing under his skin. He let out a shaky breath and muttered to himself, cheeks heating up in embarrassment. That was way too real. Like disturbingly real. Dungeon, monsters, boss fights, a final enemy that turned out to be his own father. What kind of unhinged nightmare side quest even was that? He seriously needed to touch grass. Before he could spiral any further, a voice cut through his thoughts. Someone was calling his name, asking why he was still hanging around the classroom this late. Suho looked up and saw one of his classmates standing by the door, keys in hand. She told him she was about to lock up and head out. Reality snapped fully back into place. Suho quickly stood up, forcing himself to act normal, offering to help like this wasn't seconds after the most traumatic dream of his life. And just like that, the two of them started walking the halls together, checking doors, locking windows, moving through the building like nothing supernatural had ever happened. like the world hadn't almost ended for him a moment ago. But far above all of that, miles beyond classrooms and hallways, the real observers were watching. High above, my glorious king stood in silence, surrounded by his shadows, eyes fixed on Suho below. The shadow army remained still, respectful, waiting. Igris finally turned and spoke, asking if the time had come to return the young monarch's sealed power. He reminded them that Suho had cleared the final floor this time, that he had gone further than ever before. My glorious king didn't answer immediately. His expression stayed unreadable, distant, as if weighing centuries of experience in a single breath. Then slowly he spoke. "Do you think we could have defeated the Dragon King if I had charged in using nothing but raw power?" The question hung heavy. "Even overwhelming strength is meaningless," he continued, "if it's wielded like an idiot." His gaze softened slightly as he looked down again at Suho. "Knowing when to endure instead of fight isn't weakness. It's wisdom." Another pause. "He isn't ready yet, but he will be." Off to the side, Baru stood frozen. His massive frame trembled, eyes shimmering with tears he didn't bother hiding. He had watched Suho the entire time, like a proud uncle watching a kid grow up too fast. My glorious king noticed. He gave Baru a small, gentle smile before turning back to the others. "I have a few matters to take care of," he said calmly. "But when I return, let's have dinner together, as a family." And just like that, the scene shifted. Across the world, normal life continued. Civilians went about their day when a breaking news alert flashed across television screens. The anchor announced that Hang Dong-suk and Hang Dong-soo, two walking disasters responsible for chaos everywhere, had finally been captured. The broadcast rolled on, transitioning to coverage of a massive wildfire that nearly erased an entire town. Over 50 fire trucks, 800 firefighters. Hours of non-stop battle against the flames. The fire was finally under control. In the aftermath, one firefighter, Baek Yun-ho, sat slumped against a tree, gasping for air like he had just run several marathons back-to-back. His entire body ached. Suddenly, something cold pressed against his face. He flinched, looking up to see Il-hwan standing there quietly, holding out a chilled bottle of water. No words, just a nod. Yun-ho took it, whispered his thanks, and studied the man for a moment. Even after all that fire, Il-hwan looked fine, calm, steady. The thought hit him hard. "I wish I could be that strong." Something streaked across the sky overhead. Yun-ho pointed up, asking if Il-hwan saw it too. Il-hwan glanced up briefly and replied without hesitation. "Probably just a plane." Cut. A completely different hallway now, this one buzzing with office chaos. Footsteps, paperwork, stress in the air. Jinho walked alongside a coworker, both trying to remember what they were even discussing. Something about a new name for their VR game? But Jinho looked possessed. Without warning, without context, without mercy, he kicked open the conference room door and dropped the biggest news bomb imaginable. His wife was pregnant, 6 weeks in. The room exploded, while Jinho stood there glowing like a man powered entirely by baby hype. Then, completely unprompted, he followed it up with a game title idea. Beautiful World. The room went dead silent. Everyone stared at him like he had just suggested naming a horror game Fluffy Hugs. One brave soul finally spoke up, suggesting maybe, just maybe, they shouldn't let someone high on baby fumes name their biggest project. Jinho scratched his head, realizing he might in fact be the problem. He even considered asking my glorious king for advice before remembering the man once tried to name a pet lizard Dragon Master too, and was dead serious. Laughing it off, Jinho told everyone to relax. Funding wasn't an issue anymore. They had serious backing now, not some side hustle investor. Elsewhere, Jinho's father read an article about his son, remembering how that idiot turned down a $1 billion prize to start a game studio in what was basically a closet. He scoffed, asked if there were any more stories like that. The assistant responded with the most bored no imaginable. He shook his head at his son's life choices. But after a moment, something softened. Quietly, almost reluctantly, he muttered that he wanted to meet his grandchild. And then the camera said, "Screw Earth." It blasted past the skyline, punched through the clouds, ripped straight into space. Cold, silent, endless. Floating there, like it owned the planet itself, was a massive gate, not some clean sci-fi portal. A nightmare. And just like that, the story snapped back to the beginning. Back when my glorious king was still the world's favorite E-rank punching bag. Back when gates first started tearing open across Earth. Portals linking our boring, rent-paying reality to worlds absolutely infested with monsters that did not come in peace. The fear was universal. Everyone asked the same question. What happens if one of those gates breaks? What if everything inside spills out? What if the monsters don't just crawl through and people don't run away in time? Most sane humans saw those portals and felt dread. But a handful of absolute lunatics looked at them and said, "Yeah, I'd try that." Those lunatics later got a name. Hunters. Cut to the Hunter Association support office, where one poor, overworked staff member was currently being verbally incinerated over the phone. A team leader was screaming his lungs out, demanding to know why Mr. Aura Farmer kept appearing on his squad roster like a cursed rerun episode. The man was losing it. He shouted that if they sent that walking corpse into his raid one more time, they'd better prep body bags in advance. The call ended with a slam so loud it felt personal. The staff worker slumped back in his chair, finally able to breathe. In a world where famous hunters lived like celebrities, Money, fame, power, zero dishes. Everyone wanted in. Either you joined a flashy guild, or you worked your way into the Hunter Association and flashed that badge like it meant something. But instead of glory, this guy had paperwork. He sighed and went back to sorting requests. Hunters asking for ridiculous things. Better boots, custom weapons, someone to carry their sword during lunch like they were medieval royalty. Then he saw the file. He opened it, expecting at least something decent. What he found made his jaw stiffen. The stats were abysmal, like offensively low. The kind of numbers that screamed, "Why are you not dead yet?" This wasn't a hunter profile. This was a health hazard on legs. A civilian with a death wish pretending to be relevant. The worker blinked. How is he even still alive? Then he kept reading. A hospitalized mother, a younger sibling still in school. Medical bills, no safety net, no backup plan. That was it. That was the fuel. That was why this man kept dragging his shattered body into gates he had no business entering. Later, the worker brought the file to the department chief and finally said what everyone else was thinking. Maybe it was time to stop this, to pull the plug before someone had to scrape Jinwoo off a dungeon floor. The chief listened, then calmly said they had already tried. Then he asked a question that hit way harder than expected. Why did you join the association? The worker froze. He remembered being a kid, watching a news broadcast about a hunter who got trapped in a gate while saving his team. The camera cut out. No rescue. No ending. That question had stayed with him ever since. Who saves the people who save everyone else? The chief smiled like he already knew that answer. Then he asked one final thing. Do you want him to quit or do you want to help him? The worker hesitated, said he could only tell him to stop. The chief shook his head and slid another stack of files across the desk. Hunters with power who chose to stay on the sidelines. Some people freeze, the chief said, and some people move forward anyway. Sometimes watching someone like that was enough to light a fire under everyone else. He asked again, will you help him? This time the answer was yes. Now back in the present, Suho was getting bullied by fate in the most low-stakes way possible. He lost a game of rock, paper, scissors to his classmate and ended up carrying her bag like a glorified pack mule. But mid-walk, he stopped. Something felt wrong. The air felt heavy. Off. His classmate asked if he was okay. He brushed it off, but his instincts stayed sharp. High above them, a dragon tore through the sky like it had an appointment with destiny. Riding its back was my glorious king, with Mommy Cha casually riding shotgun. She watched the clouds roll by, smiling softly. She said it had been a long time since she experienced something like this. Then my glorious king handed her a gift, their 16th wedding anniversary. She told him not to stay out too long. He promised he wouldn't. She left. He stayed. Ahead of him, a massive gate hovered in the sky like it wanted to end the day on a violent note. My glorious king stared up at it, remembering something someone once said. Strong hunters attract danger like magnets. He didn't deny it. Instead, he summoned his strongest shadows and walked forward without hesitation. Back inside the dungeon, the aftermath looked like a full-blown war crime scene. Broken terrain, shattered remains, silence. Suho stood alone, staring at a massive door like it personally owed him answers. Maybe it hid something worse than anything he'd faced so far. Maybe it was the end, but there was only one way to know. He stepped forward. On the wall nearby, 3 lanterns burned. One flickered out. Suho collapsed to the floor, drained, barely breathing. He had no idea how much time passed. Days? Longer? Still, he forced himself back up. The second lantern went dark. Only one remained. His hand steadied. Somewhere deep inside his mind, a familiar voice echoed. Arise. He faced the door again. This could be it. But if something beyond that door could make him stronger, if it could stop him from stagnating, from rotting in place, then he would take that risk. The door cracked open. Light poured out, blinding and overwhelming. Suho stepped forward and spoke with quiet resolve. Whatever is behind that door, I want to face it. The light swallowed everything. And with that, we covered the entire damn manhwa, from Jinwoo being a broke E-rank punching bag to my glorious king riding dragons with Mommy Cha. If you made it to the end, you're a real one. So like the video, subscribe to the channel, and drop the next manhwa you want covered, because the grind never ends.